Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I'm doing very well. All right, we're fresh into springtime here. Weather's changed. Even in North Florida, it's gotten hot, even though occasionally it's dropped down into the 50s at night. But oh well, c'est la vie, you know, crazy stuff. And yep, everything is good. I don't know, the last time I mentioned that I had actually harvested my little potatoes, and I'm so excited because, like I said, when you see these other people that grow, wow, and I can grow all these potatoes, and it's like you make it look so easy until you get somebody like me that's like, because I planted those little potatoes, and I was just thrilled with myself that I got a bunch of little potatoes back, which is great. And so I'm gonna, like I said the last time, I'm gonna move on to onions, and I'm gonna replant the potatoes. And you know what that means? That if the apocalypse comes, I can live off my potatoes. All right. So what can I say? And I've got a guy across the street that does the traps. And it's like, I'll trade you some potatoes for some pig or deer or something. I got it worked out. Believe me, I've got it all worked out. But hopefully it will not come down to that because let's face it, I'm a wimp. I'm a wimp. I'm a wimp. I've a lot of people, these people that see these movies and they get all nostalgic for the olden times. Oh, back in the old West or medieval and all this. And I'm like, you know what? That's great when you're watching it from an air conditioned room, living like that. Nah, thanks, but no thanks. I'll pass. Anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part has to do with who the guest is tonight. This is the first time this gentleman is on Stories of the Supernatural, and his name is Richard Valdes. Now, he, since childhood, has shown an interest in the supernatural. He has a Christian background and was exposed to religious studies, delving into demonic possession, exorcism, angels, and occult practices. Later in adulthood, he continued the studies in these subject matters through his pastor, Frank Marzullo. Now, he did read up on cases involving Ed and Lorraine Warren, John Zaffis, and especially the late and great Hans Holzer, which, as everybody knows, I have a special place in my heart for Hans because my first ghost books were from Hans Holzer. He's been mentioned in the book Ghost Hunters of the South by Alan Brown, representing the state of Florida during his stint with Florida Ghost Team from 2004 to 2005. And then he created a National Paranormal Society with two other colleagues. In April of 2005, he was mentioned again in a book, State by State, edited by Matt Weiland and Sean Wilsey, for an investigation involving the great state of Louisiana and the Ninth Ward, which was devastated by Hurricane Katrina. God, I bet there's a lot of stuff going on there from before and recent. The author's name of the contributing story was Joshua Clark. In 2015, he was given the honor from Bishop James Long and the United States Old Catholic Church to be recognized as one of 3 demonologists for his organization. His team, Paranormal Consulting Agencies, wish to continue to shed light into the unknown world of the paranormal in hopes of helping every client one at a time. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Rich?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show, Marlene.
On the contrary, it's my pleasure. Let me ask you, Rich, and I obviously you had an interest as a kid, but everybody sometimes, what you interest you as a kid, as you get older, they falls by the wayside. What happened with you?
What happened with me was I was 15 years old. I thought I was having a dream where I was in my aunt's room. My aunt, little background, was had Down syndrome, and I was getting up from her bed, and I realized I was not the same height. She was way smaller than I was even then, and I walked to the doorway, and black faint, and I felt the sensation of falling. And then I woke up to the pounding on the door for my mother, and she was telling me, "You got to get up, Ricky, get up. Um, your aunt has had at that time 13 grand mal epileptic seizures.
Oh,
The ambulance was on the way. She couldn't open my door, but I'm 15 years old. I'd lock my door. I want
of
privacy. It
course.
is what it is. And I couldn't get up. I couldn't wake up. Couldn't move my body. And that scared me. I had a very shallow breathing. I remember that. When I finally came to, I put on pants, shirt, shoes, ran 5 blocks. And when I got there, I found my aunt exactly where I left her in what I thought was a dream, right at the doorway.
Yeah, okay.
And it wasn't, it was an OBE. But considering that I lived in a family that was very uh, evangelical,
Mm-hmm.
they decided to call that experience demonic. And I was like,
Okay.
BS, this is not demonic. I'm gonna start looking things up. I went to the library, which is just 3 blocks away from where I lived, and I started looking into books like ESP. That's where I actually found the term OBE, out of body experience, and it explained everything I had experienced. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. So this is not demonic. It's just that that's the answer they were going to give me. And that's what got me interested in the paranormal. Started watching In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, all that stuff. And I read the book, The Ghost Hunter by Hans Holzer, and it really got me interested. So that's how I got
Right.
started. And then the demonology was a calling, really, down the road.
Right. So, in other words, that was a big wake up call in a sense when you have this, and at least you wanted to get an explanation for it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. When you're rational and you try to explain it to yourself and you're like, this doesn't add up. There's got to be
Mm.
something here that I'm missing.
Yeah.
And by the way, what happened to your aunt? Was she okay after that?
My aunt, thankfully, she had, I believe, 3 or 4 more. So, 16, maybe 17 more. She was rushed to the hospital, but she
Hmm.
she was fine. She
Okay.
she suffered from it on a regular basis,
All right.
and she it's hard to believe she finally passed away 7 years ago, and
Okay.
we buried her on Valentine's Day. So
Okay.
Valentine's Day is not special for me anymore.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. But in other words, considering everything, because that grand mal seizure,
Oh yeah.
that was many years ago. So yeah, that goes to show you.
One thing I left out, and I didn't mean to, was actually when I got to her, and she
Hmm.
was exactly where I left her in what I thought was a dream at that time.
Right.
She looked right at me and slapped me, and I felt like it was her way of saying, "How dare you? You were in
Right.
in my head, looking out my eyes." And it didn't occur to me until a few days later, and uh, not getting the answers I needed for my family. You know,
Right.
yeah,
Right. You didn't decide I'm not going to leave it at that.
no,
Of course, that's that great age of 15 when it's like, nah, I, I- I'm going to get my own answer. Sorry.
that and
Yeah.
being Cuban, I'm very stubborn.
Of course, there's a rebellious thing. It's like, nah,
Yeah,
there's something here that's missing. You guys are missing. You're either not telling me something, or there's something here you don't know exactly what it is.
it's not that they weren't telling me anything. It's just that that's what
This
they've been
was
programmed to
sure,
say.
right.
So I couldn't really hold that against them. So I went outside of the norm in order to find my answers.
So here you go, and obviously, like what happened? Did you go into a paranormal group, or did something land in your lap? How did it happen that you kept working in that?
I, you know, my dad, may he rest in peace, purchased
Hmm.
a Polaroid camera for me. This
Okay,
is the 80s.
sure.
He got me a tape recorder. Yes, with
Hmm.
tape, lead tape, and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. I tell everybody, once upon a time you had to pay to develop film. And everyone
Yeah,
looks at me like, yeah, there was something like that once upon a time.
something like that, right? And that's what
Uh-huh.
they always say. And I decided to take a few notes from many of the books that I was reading from the library and put it to use. I found a way to get myself to the Biltmore Hotel, which at that
Okay.
time in Coral Gables was boarded up and
Yes, it
abandoned.
was. Yes, it was.
I snuck in.
You're one of those, huh?
Yeah, I'm one of those. I snuck in with my tape recorder and my Polaroid. And back then, there was no EMF or anything like
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Uh, I went up to the 13th floor, not using the elevator. I had to literally go up the stairs. That was a trek. And uh, ran into a few homeless people that were actually in
Oh, there
there.
was squatting in there?
Yeah, there was a lot of
Okay.
squatting and it smelled like urine. And
I bet.
let's not go into that, but it was bad.
Yeah.
I got to the 13th floor because, you know, they said that the
Sure.
13th floor is where Capone stayed. There was the presidential suite. There was a shootout there. There was
Yeah, Fatty
also,
Arbuckle was really killed there, by the way. But
yes,
yeah,
and
but the
he was,
mafia stuff, the
the
people got,
mafioso stuff was
yeah,
already there.
yeah,
The lobby was actually used as a makeshift morgue back in the day
right.
during World War II. So
Hmm.
I couldn't really go in there because that was literally, I'm not kidding, lit up. You know, they had barrels lit up with
Okay.
fire and everything, trying to keep
Oh
warm.
my
Although,
God, that they even had. Oh boy.
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I get there, I did everything by the book, got no evidence, but I still continued. I went to Coral Castle. I went to all the different locations throughout the state of Florida on my
Okay.
own. And I did that for many, many years. And I did it on my own. And then one day it occurred to me, I want to know what it's like to investigate with a team. So I joined at that time, and I got to change that because I heard your intro for me. Um, I joined Florida Ghost Team, or at that time, South Florida Ghost Team 2003.
Okay.
And in 2005 is when I left and started my own team. But I wanted to know what it was like to work with a paranormal team, bring what I know
Hmm.
and learn from the people that were there. And bam, it just kept on going from that point on. So I've been doing the paranormal for 30, longer than demonology. So 38 years. And when it comes to demonology, it's been like 36.
Okay.
So that in itself has brought a lot of things, a lot of fascinating things to me.
Sure. So let
Yeah.
me ask you, what happened? The reason why I know, because how did you go from a regular ghost hunt? I'm going to say, when I say regular dead people, how's that? To finding
Human
yourself
spirits. Yeah.
like with dealing with a non-human entity. Was it by accident, or did you already know ahead of time when you went on a case what was there?
My first run in with something demonic, I was 11 years old, and it
Oh.
was in the church. And I remember going into Sunday school at that
Mm-hmm.
time. They were having the service in, because they were building the church. So we were having service in a dance studio. As you know, dance studios have, I forget what they're called, those dance bars.
Yes.
They have one and then two. And some guy walked in off the street. We didn't know who he was. Sat down amidst everyone in the section where the adults would hear the sermon, and the kids were sent off to another room. And I kept, 15 minutes in, I start hearing this banging and screaming and hollering. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And I peeked outside and I see this small, unassuming 4'8" guy going through those dance bars like twigs, bam, 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 and screaming. And the screams were not normal. It sounded like it was a chorus of
Okay.
voices screaming and saying whatever he was saying at the same time.
Okay.
Dropped to the floor, started convulsing, and the pastor, co-pastor, and the elders surrounded him and they started praying over him. It took 30 minutes. He snapped out of it. He didn't know where he was. And he said, I want to go home now. And he's like, but I don't know where home is. So one of the co-pastors asked, hey, can I look at your driver's license? We'll call the police and have you taken there. And he got him a meal, KFC. I remember that.
Right.
And sent him on his way. And from that point on, I kept asking the pastor, what happened? Why did he do that? Was he crazy or something? And he's like, no, he was
Right.
possessed. And when you
Okay.
tell it to an 11-year-old,
Yeah.
your way of thinking doesn't really process things. So
Yeah.
I started looking into it on my own.
Okay.
And I realized I had an inclination to really absorb and understand demonic, angelic, anything that had to do with that. And that in itself is, I had a passion for it. When I
Okay.
finally reached 18, Pastor Frank Marzullo, the same pastor,
Hmm.
offered, and he said, you have a calling for this. I want to train you to be a demonologist. I was like, what's a demonologist? So
Okay.
he finally explained that to me, and we started our studies. And up until my mid 20s, he passed away,
Okay.
and my training stopped. But I continued,
Let me
kept
ask
reading
you,
all the
was
books.
and the reason why I asked this is I've spoken to people that they think of this thing of being a demonologist, like they get an idea of what they think it is, and then when they actually find themselves in the real moment, they're like, what am I doing here? You know, who told me that this was a good idea? In other words, the reality, sometimes I think Hollywood and stuff you make up in your
Yeah,
head
yeah,
is quite different from the reality of being in the presence of a
yeah.
demonic spirit. Have you, what happened with you did when you now as an adult, not as a kid, what happened? Did it confirm for you I'm doing the right thing, or did you have any doubt like I don't know about this? What happened?
Well, no, it's never been. I don't know about this. It's why me?
Ah,
Um,
okay.
because it's a calling. You
Right.
know that you understand this and see more into this than other people do. The
Mhm.
studies that I've done have just not been biblical. It's been in every faith religion that you possibly think worldwide,
Right. Okay.
occult practices, and everything that you could possibly think of. It takes a long time to study.
Sure.
And it's funny you mention these people. I call them self-proclaimed demonologists. They're the
Yes.
ones that they say, okay, today I woke up, I'm going to be a demonologist. I'm like,
Mhm.
no, that's not how this works. Sorry. Sorry to burst your bubble. I have witnessed 3 liberations. I can't call them exorcisms because different faiths call them different things.
Different things. Yes.
I was trained to be a religious demonologist. And then after becoming a religious demonologist, that was recognized by the second church that I joined.
Mhm.
I then started working with Bishop James Long back in 2010. By
Okay.
2015, I had finished my training with him. It took 5 years, and
Okay.
let me tell you, it was intense. You know, uh, testing on the field and literally by computer, it was hard. So I laugh at these individuals that say, "Yeah, I'm a demonologist."
Right.
Why? And I always ask them, "What makes you a demonologist?"
And I bet that some of them, dare I say it, have a coming to Jesus moment.
Well,
Oh, and
they're coming to Jesus moment is me, because
right.
I asked them the right questions.
Right.
And I said, "So who trained you?" And they're like, "What do you mean who trained me?" Uh, who trained you?
Right.
Well, I just watched a few shows of Supernatural. So Sam and Dean Winchester trained
Yeah.
you?
From Supernatural.
Um, well, I read this book. You read a
Yes.
book? So this makes you a demonologist?
Yes.
And they're like, what are you getting at? What church do you work with? What church are you affiliated with? What church actually, recognizes you and says,
Right.
yes, Rich Valdez is demonologist for the United States Old Catholic Church. I can
Right.
literally give them the phone number to Bishop James Long, and he would confirm that. I have a certification as well.
Right.
These people can't produce that. So when
Sure.
they get into it, what scares them is if they don't run into me first. What scares
Okay.
them is when they actually do come across something inhuman.
Sure.
And that inhuman thing, that demon that knows more about them than you know of it, will
Mhm.
use your weaknesses against you. And
Sure.
if there's a face off, God forbid, you better have an exit plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I would say that most trained demonologists, even of different faiths, they first try to rule out if it's a mental health problem. In other words, let's make sure that what we're not dealing with is somebody that's got mentally ill before. I mean, they might demonstrate certain behavior. And by the way, one thing doesn't exclude the other either.
Of
But
course.
some people, really is just mental illness, and exercise. I mean, that's the worst thing you could do because this person really might need medical attention, drugs. Something to stabilize if they got in a chemical imbalance. But that's one of the things that you hear from most any person or persons that are doing demonology or exorcisms or deliverance is
Yeah.
make sure that this person it's not suffering from mental illness.
It's a process of elimination, and unfortunately, those that are not formally trained like I am
Hmm.
do not know the protocols that the church goes by. Even back when I was with other churches, not like the old Catholic Church, they
Right.
had protocols.
Sure.
The first protocol was, of course, interviewing them and then setting up a mental evaluation with
Hmm.
a licensed professional mental
Exactly.
psychologist. And that is to rule out, as you stated earlier, mental illness.
Yep.
Now, does this mean that, oh, we found mental illness, so you're not possessed or you don't
No.
have an attachment or anything like
No.
that?
No. No. No.
No. On the contrary, they actually prefer to mess with the
Yes.
mentally ill. That's
Yes.
where they hide. So you kind of have to, once that is taken care of, that's where I
Right.
come in and I do the testing to see if there is something demonic with them. But, you know, that's where a lot of these self-proclaimed demonologists do not know. They don't have any formal training when it comes to testing. They don't know what to say, what to do, what to gather. I have a toolkit, in fact. I'll bring it up right here.
Oh man, you're ready to go.
Yeah. I've had this for a good 15 years. I got tired of
Okay.
carrying it around in a medical bag, and I said I need something that I can just stash,
It's like,
and
okay.
everything I need is in there. And
Okay.
when that person sees me walk in, or that demon, if there is one, sees me walk in, they're like, "Uh-oh."
Let me ask you something, Rich. Knowing what you describe about demonic spirits,
Hmm.
don't they kind of know ahead of the curve even before you arrive sometimes that you're on the way?
Yes. I've had many cases where 2 weeks. Actually,
Mhm.
no. I'll use one that took me a month to get to.
Okay.
And I knew it was demonic right off the bat. Um, we had set things up. I knew what was going on already. We had already dealt with this family, and I knew it was demonic. So we
Okay.
set things up to go there. We do a little bit of paranormal investigating just to gather,
Right.
EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon, um, try to communicate, and then do a blessing of the house.
Okay.
Um, when the host of
Mhm.
this said demon got wind of this, that's what we were going to do, because I have to communicate with her. That week that we were supposed it was on a weekend that I was supposed to go, just a day before, I ended up with having a bout with diverticulitis.
There you go.
Landed in the hospital Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get out of the hospital. So I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, let's postpone this. So let's do this for next weekend. Next weekend comes around. Kidney stones.
You're like, "Okay."
I was like, I don't think
Okay.
somebody wants me going over
It's
there.
like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm getting the suspicion here." Yes.
So I end up in the hospital again. I'm pumped full of pain meds. There's
Right.
no way. I was in and out, but there's no way I was going to still go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just wore it off.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm good. I can go. That was a good 3 hour drive. I wasn't going to risk my team and myself.
Exactly.
I said, oh, let's postpone it till next weekend. No, I ended up having another kidney stone and diverticulitis all at the same time. Went in on Thursday, got out on Monday. And I was like, okay, this whatever's with this person does not want me
Mhm.
going.
Yeah.
So we finally get a chance to go. My mistake was one of our team members was dealing with an abscessed tooth. So she looked like a hamster.
Okay.
We shouldn't have gone.
Yes.
because the moment we got there, I'd say 30 minutes in, and we're doing, EVPs and whatnot. And mind you, I do have kryptonite. My kryptonite is frogs. So the lady is going around opening the sliding glass doors, showing us the outside and everything. And a
Boom.
frog jumps in. I was on the counter. I was like, screw this.
It,
I ain't doing
that,
this.
that,
No,
uh,
no, I ain't cool with this. So, and
like,
that, that was the
that's
first
great.
15
That's
minutes. So
great.
imagine.
I'm sorry. I mean, but that's great. It's like, yeah, this is now that you're here. Now I know it. It's like, okay,
Oh, hell no.
you
I
get the
don't do
frog.
frogs. I do not do frogs. There's a story behind it. I'll
I'm
tell
sure
it to
there
you
is.
later. But yeah, let's just say that that's that was the final nail in my coffin, because I knew, because they
Hmm.
know your weaknesses. They know what
Of
you
course they
fear the
do.
most. They know how to manipulate your weaknesses, health wise, mentally, emotionally, everything. They know all the buttons to push. So when I noticed that my team member could barely talk and she was like
Hmm.
doing this and doing this, I'm like, okay, that's it, cut, we're done.
Right.
And we left. Besides, other person we were supposed to help chose not to be there that evening. She said, I want to go to the clubs and party. I'm like,
All right.
all right, well,
Okay.
we said goodbye. We never spoke to them again, because the thing is, when you have someone that is going through something demonic,
Right.
they need to help you
Of
help
course
them.
they gotta want to. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
So let me ask something. Was this something in attachment to one of the people, or was it just an infestation of the home, or what was going on?
this person, and not giving out names, was
Hmm.
a paranormal investigator,
Okay.
but she was addicted to pain meds.
Oh, what a
And
bad idea that is.
yeah, back then, and still to this day, she would get those fake uh, prescriptions, a
Yes.
prescription that would give her like 200, 300 fill of,
Yes.
whatever
She hooked
pain
up with
med.
some pill mill and that
Yes.
was supplying her. Okay.
And that unfortunately led to her going to an investigation one day, and she was taken over. That being the case, she didn't know she was dealing with an inhuman spirit. She thought she was dealing with grandma. Grandma was not grandma. Grandma
Okay.
was, I'd say a low level demon, but it was still
Right.
enough to infiltrate her and open her up to a hierarchical demon. And that's what we were dealing with. It then also skipped her, and it would actually, go from her to her daughter, who I think was 26 at the time.
That's a bad thing.
So yeah, that was like a tag team, and we weren't ready for it, because I should have pulled a plug the moment I found out that my team member was already in question, having that
Sure.
abscess, and having had
Yeah.
abscess before.
That's
That's
always
painful.
and I've been doing paranormal investigations since the 90s.
Hmm.
And I worked with a research foundation through the state of Florida, and usually when they had cases down in South Florida, I would participate, and I worked with a lot of different groups. Is my point. That's one of the things I learned when I tell them, when you're sick or just even really tired, like exhausted, you become the weak link in that team.
Yep.
And chances are, if there's something there along those lines, malevolent, you're going to get targeted. You're going to get targeted.
Agreed.
Okay. Even if you're coming down with something or you're stressed out, how people sometimes bad things happen in your life. Not that's why I would tell everybody, when there was like teams and everything, like don't ever go. Or I myself, I wouldn't go if I was tired, coming down with something, get sick, forget it. Because people think that you're not going to get affected physically, but you do. You can become
Yeah.
targeted that way.
Your
And
defenses are down.
this lady, she's suffering with an addiction. I'm surprised she hadn't gotten something before, to be honest with you.
She, the daughter, eventually got taken over, because her mother,
Oh, of course.
which was she was living with her mom,
Sure.
was the one that brought this back from this case.
Sure.
And when you're in close proximity of someone else
Yes.
that is possessed,
Yes.
whatever's with that individual will start messing with
Absolutely.
other individuals. And something people seem to think, oh, a demon takes over and tries to take over you. Actually, one of the things I've noticed over the 30 somewhat years I've been doing demonology,
Mhm.
they don't attack you per se more than they attack the people you love around you to
Right.
weaken you. And I've
True.
seen this more than I have that physical, attack with the diverticulitis, the kidney stones, and then both at the
Mhm.
same time, and then the frickin' frog that came from the
Yeah, like, what
outside
are the
in.
odds?
What are the odds of that crap happening? But you know what? It did. But usually they attack mentally, emotionally, the people that are around you. I had a case years back where I didn't know, or at least I didn't see the signs at the time. Because sometimes when you get so used to doing just paranormal, paranormal, paranormal,
Mhm.
I didn't see the signs as a demonologist that this was demonic.
Okay.
Brought it back with me,
Oh.
affected my wife, affected my kids. My kids were all of a sudden started fighting all day long.
Okay.
My wife and I started fighting over the stupidest crap, and then my dog, which is still alive, thank God. Um, he was a puppy at the time. I'd say
Okay.
two year old puppy, and he just sat himself at the in the kitchen, barking at the attic door all week
The
long.
attic. That's a
What?
favorite hangout
Yeah, it's
place.
dark. It's
And
but
yes,
here it's dark
attics,
and hot.
yes, attics, hidden spaces. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. I
Until it
found,
occurred to me,
you know what? I've
and
had so
yeah,
many cases. I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
yeah.
Where people, when you start asking them what's been happening or what they'll say, well, I hear scratching. You know that in Florida, for people that there's no basements, but some houses, some of the older houses will have like a short attic space. Because
Yeah.
in South Florida, as well, and I've heard people say, well, I hear scratching or stuff going up there in the attic where they've never had before.
Right.
I'm not going to say don't jump the gun. It might be an animal.
Yeah, that
Okay.
could be a rat, a raccoon,
It could
could
be
be anything.
anything. It could be anything. It could be a bird that got somehow found the
Mhm.
way through the eaves. But that thing about when you said that thing that he's staring at the attic, I was like, oh, that right
Barking,
there, barking. That
morning, noon, night, and then I
right
was
there.
like,
That's your dead giveaway. It's like, oh, somebody's hanging out there.
yeah, and literally, I was like, hold on a second. It occurred to me on the fifth day. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I know what to do. So I lit up my frankincense and myrrh.
Hmm.
I did the blessing throughout the house, and within 15 minutes,
Shazam,
stopped.
it's
Everything
gone.
stopped. The kids started getting along. My wife was like, I was like,
Everything's good.
okay, no
Right? Yeah. It's
problem.
like,
The
yeah,
dog went to
exactly.
bed. I
That was
was
it.
like, what
The
the
dog,
heck?
no more barking at the attic.
Yeah,
And you ask yourself, okay, what would one thing have to do with the other? And yes, yes,
it does.
yes.
It really does.
And you caught it real quick because some people it takes them a lot longer, if ever, to realize
I'm
what
dense, but I
happened.
ain't that dense.
No, but believe it or not, some people it takes them a while to like figure out or that they do the backtracking.
Yeah.
Even if they're not doing paranormal investigations, they're just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they pick something up. They get a hitchhiker.
And now I don't play around with that anymore. I
Oh,
always make sure before I leave the house, even before I speak to a person that allegedly is claiming that they have um, something attached to them, something
hmm,
demonic, before I even engage in conversation with that person,
yes,
I seal my home,
hmm,
I seal myself,
yes,
and I go outside. I don't care how hot it is here in the 305. I
right,
go outside and then I'll talk to them. I'll sweat.
sure,
I don't care, but I'd rather
right.
sweat than have my family affected.
Sure. And people don't realize that even through electronic communications, sometimes you will get something. See, because their idea, especially I imagine in your case that you're a demonologist, is they want to head you off at the pass.
Oh yeah,
They want to somehow make sure that you don't arrive there and upset what they got going on.
they know what I'm
Uh,
bringing.
of
It's not
course.
me.
Well,
It's what's with me.
which was with me, but you're the you're
Yeah,
the you're the delivery system. How's that?
yeah. Let's not kill the.
Right, but let me ask you, have you and I've heard of this. Have you ever gone on a paranormal investigation where at the beginning, yeah, you get I'm going to say regular dead people. When I mean dead people, I mean human, but then you realize somewhere in the middle of the investigation that you've got an extra one in the background that is not human, a human spirit?
I've come across that way too often. They like
Okay.
to use the energy from the human spirits, so they keep them there
Mm-hmm.
and they use that energy plus the energy they get from the people that are living
Sure.
and their fear. They incite fear because that is one of the most potent energies next to love, which I strongly believe in. Love is the best, the strongest of all, but fear is a
Okay.
second, and it's a brother, sister, sibling situation. And when they incite that fear, not only in the living but the dead,
Sure.
they become more powerful. So they stick around because it's a food source.
Sure.
That's how it works for them.
And sometimes I believe that even when paranormal investigators come, they just like push the dead people forward, like, yeah, these are culprits, and that's, I think, sometimes where paranormal groups will get a call back from the family and say, hey, and you're like, wait, and then you go back and you realize, nah, there was something here all along.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
usually how it works.
that's really, really the big thing to worry about. Uh, and and also that thing about I've sometimes being at the wrong place at the wrong time will get you into trouble. As far as one time I went on a case where these people, they had moved in, well, they had come in from out of the country, from Australia, and they had rented this big nice property, big
Hmm.
house, big grounds. They started having all these things. It turns out later they found out that somebody had put like a curse and buried something on the property. Now, and the point I'm making is the original intent of whatever they did had nothing to do with his family, but from the moment they moved in there, they got the receiving end of it,
Of course.
and they had no idea, what was going on. And sometimes things like that, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, because you'll ask people like, where have you been doing, where, like trying to backtrack, and they're like, what, nothing, nothing. And then it's some things like that. You have to even be careful where you move as far as the place you choose to live.
The funny thing is, um, having lived in Miami my whole life, knowing that there was a botanica every
Hmm.
2 blocks from
Sure.
where I lived, um, there is Santeria, which runs rampant.
Yes.
There's voodoo as well.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, and there are many different sects when it comes to Santeria. There's Baleros, which are the
Yes.
ones that actually do the bindings and they do the curses and whatnot. In
Yeah,
fact,
it's like black magic.
yes, my father, may rest in peace, was once a Balero back in the
Okay.
day. He got,
Okay.
paid to do, brujeria, un trabajo,
Right.
a work.
Right.
And he, of course, he repented of all that. He thankfully became Christian and left all that. But he also was one of the instrumental individuals that helped me understand Santeria. And
Okay.
I said it, you know,
Right.
gringo style,
The
Santeria.
anglicized version of
Yeah,
Santeria.
pero Santeria, which is
Right.
the
Hmm.
correct way to say it.
Yeah.
And I understand everything about it. I have nothing against the faith.
Hmm.
Um, but just like any faith out there, any religion, it has its good, it has its bad.
Sure.
And it's a matter of understanding. And I had this one case many years back. I want to say no, it was 1996. It was 1996. And I got this vision
Hmm.
that the reason this woman was in a coma was they had medical reasons, but there was no real reason for her to be in a coma. But there she was in a coma. And I'm here sitting in front of her visiting because it was a friend of mine's mother. And I got this flash image of like black clouds rolling in, but every time the flash of the thunder or the lightning would strike behind it, you would see eyes inside the clouds, and it was coming closer, but it was over her house. I
Oh.
described the house to her daughter, and she
Okay.
said, "That's my mom's house." And then all of a sudden, I got this other image where in the attic, there was half a coconut,
Okay.
something bound,
Mm-hmm.
and it had some kind of liquid in it as well. And she said, "What, in my mom's house? Why would?" And I said, "I feel it's santeria. It's a trabajo, something that someone did on her."
Right.
And believe it or not, I was right. She went
Okay.
there. She went up in the attic and she found what I saw.
And did they have any idea who did it?
No,
But let me tell you that somebody had to have gained access to the house somehow.
there were the likely suspects, but they all swore up and down they didn't
Oh, of
do it.
course.
But once that was done, she came out of the coma and
I
she
was
got
about
rid
to.
of it. And then she was fine for 2 days. Then she fell asleep and she was sitting next to her and she remembers this clearly. And I remember her telling me, she said, "I'm here as you're praying over her," because I was doing a blessing over her.
Okay.
And she said, I could I don't know how you didn't see it because I had my eyes closed. But she said that behind her everything lit up. Her
All right.
face lit up.
Okay.
And she looked like she was being freed.
Okay.
Then I left that morning. She woke up just in time to see her mother. Her
Okay.
face lit up, but there was an angel behind her.
Okay.
And then she passed away.
Okay.
But
All
she
right.
passed away in peace,
Right.
and that's the most important thing.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. And that, that well, I hope this lady realized that she had somebody gunning for her mom or the family or something because
Well, I guess we'll never know. This
oh no,
was
no, no, no. Of course nobody's ever, gonna say, "Hey, by the way, somehow or other I snuck into your house and went up into your attic because I knew you weren't gonna look there."
and
You
it was
know.
right over her bed.
Oh my okay, yeah. You know exactly who was yeah. And yeah, it
Someone
came
was gunning for her for sure. Good choice
yes.
of words.
Yes, yes. And that's incredible that you had that basically that vision that you're seeing, okay, this is not just a medical problem.
No.
There's something
It
going on with
it
her.
was a stroke at first,
Right, right.
and it happened in her bedroom as she was laying down.
And you know what? And this is the thing, Rich. People, anybody can get sick. It's like, you can't say every time somebody gets sick or has something, you're going to say, this was a curse or something.
No.
The human condition is things happen to people. You get sick, you have a cold, you break a leg, you fall into a coma. Not everything, but every once in a while, you do run across that. And I think a lot of people sometimes, how can I say, they're dismissive of something like a curse. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? They kind of think it's like, oh, that's too hokey. Curse, come on, come on. That's like for superstitious people kind of deal. And well, and you yourself, you said you got it from your dad, which he wouldn't have lied to you. He would have told you the truth as far as, let me ask you, did he ever mention anything, which from what I understand, this sect of, Santeria, Palero is even darker, which is called the Bakwa, which
Hmm.
is, I heard that they're like on the beyond dark because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
sometimes, uh, work with human sacrifice. Did you ever hear anything about that? They're very
He
secretive. I know that they're very
he never got into that sect, but he
okay.
said that he was asked to join, but he was never
Right.
comfortable. So he
Yes.
stuck to the usual sacrifice of, chickens
All
or
right.
goats or anything like that. And he just never wanted to get into that. He said that no, there was something that kept telling me don't get into that. And it's a good thing he did it. But yes, I know what you speak of, and
Right.
yes, it's something that's very taboo, hush hush, and
Yes, it is. It is. People don't realize that if you ever spill the beans about if you ever join it and you know who the members are and you open your mouth, they're gonna do away with you. Like,
I know people that are santeros,
right.
and they've joined the different branches that have splintered
Right.
off, uh, but they don't talk about it.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah,
People don't realize that. You know how you hear about the mafia that once you're in, you can never leave?
They
You know, like
drag you in. You think
they
you're out,
drag you. Let
drag
me tell
you
you
in.
from what I understand, they're like along once you're if you ever join and you know whatever you there is to know, that's it. You can never say, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore." I've
Yep.
heard that that's it. If you're in, that's it. You're there for life, or if not, they shorten your life kind of deal. They're very secretive about
They
their
fit
membership and their practices.
they
Yep.
fit you for cement boots, and you're swimming with fishes all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, getting back to the thing about the curses that a lot of, different practices, and I'm sure you've run across it. Let me ask you, have you come across where it's not really a non-human entity, a demon, but more like what I said, where it's a curse? It's the
Uh,
effects of a curse.
yes, often.
Okay.
But usually, if it's a curse, you have to
Mhm.
actually fight fire with fire, and you have
Right.
to call whoever. Okay, let's say it's since we're already on the subject, Santeria.
Right.
You have to call in a santero,
Right.
a high priest or priestess, to actually
Hmm.
come in and do the work to go against it. Now,
Okay.
people would say, "But you're a Christian and you believe in God and God created everything. You could do that." I could, but
Right.
oftentimes, if the person already knows the culprit, they already know the
Right.
cause, they already know how this got started, you have to go back and you have to
Okay.
actually fight that fire with the same fire you started with.
Right.
So I
Exactly.
usually, and I know it's not
Right. No, no, I know
recommended,
where you're going.
but you have to suggest to them, look, you got this, you started this, you're going to have to end it. I will pray for you, I will assist in whatever way I can, but you must call in a santero. You must call someone that knows what they're doing because they now need to work
Right.
this curse out of your life. So I've had to do that in the
Reversing.
past. Yes.
Haven't you ever haven't you ever had a situation, and I don't know if you've run across this, where something starts happening in the household, and for example, when I would interview people, let's say I would interview them out of earshot of everybody else, because I would start getting these stories about people fessing up. I don't know, have you ever run across where stuff is happening and at the beginning nobody knows anything about nothing. And then when you start talking to one of them by themselves, all of a sudden you start hearing either they were involved in occult practices or they were doing something, how they might have gotten where it's like, well, because I would tell them, look, tell me the truth. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not the morality police, but tell me the truth. And you'd hear sometimes these stories about, well, I was here, I was there, I did this, I did, I practiced that. Or, yeah, I would, it's this and this person, I'm going to curse you. And I was like, ah, really? That's interesting to know. And then have you ever run across that at the beginning, they're giving you one story
And then
and
it
then later
changes.
on,
Yeah. I oftentimes, well, it's not that a lot of them have been like, well, the ones you're talking about, I
right?
kind of left out,
Yes, I'm laughing because I know exactly what you mean. Like all of a sudden,
and I'm like, how could you leave out the fact that you were having sex with Satan?
right?
I
Yeah,
mean, come on.
exactly.
I mean, that's like something major. What did you
Right.
just happen to glance by that and go
Yes.
straight to? And then all this activity started.
Right. Like, and I have no idea.
I had no idea, but yeah, yeah, he looked so beautiful, and I'm like,
Yes,
oh, all this, and
exactly.
what ticks me off is really is all that time researching, investigating, and whatnot, and they leave that one. I'm not gonna say small,
Yeah.
huge,
Right. Elephant in the room
huge
kind of thing.
elephant in the room with a tutu dancing around, and what,
Yeah.
you expected no one to notice this at
Right.
all?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
If because it's like they're almost afraid. I want to say that people are going to say, "Well, it's your fault," and it's like, okay, pointing fingers. It's like beyond this. If you ask for help at this point, it's like rather to get the truth, to get an idea of what we're dealing with, versus everybody is like scratching their head, like, hey, why are you having nightmares, or why is, like you said, things happening in the house.
yeah.
It helps
It
when,
helps if you have that one detail. Oh, sorry. Uh, here's
yeah.
the spirit board I was using, and the planchette, and
Yeah.
slipped my mind.
Mind. that little detail. But yes,
Yeah,
and people, it's surprising because sometimes people don't realize that that somebody they kind of have sometimes how many times I would I interview somebody beforehand, and there's a set of questions, like how are you, and they're like, no, no, no idea. Have you? No,
weeks later,
no, no.
months.
And
By
then
the
all of a
way,
sudden they all of a sudden, like you said, all of a sudden then you get the, and it's like, I don't, sometimes I wonder, are they afraid that you're not going to go, that you're not going to, participate, because especially if it was something dark, because I tell people you can even get an attachment from an item that you pick up at a
yes,
curbside.
yeah,
All right. It could be that simple, innocent, in other words. You see an item on the curbside or even a garage sale, and you pick it up and it's like, man, this is in great shape. And then it takes a
imagine
while. It has,
imagine having those items sent to your house all the time.
is that what's happening with you?
No, my friend John Zaffis,
Oh my God. Yes. Right.
and he posts this, and then I'm always like, I tell him, "Oh man, why did you post this?" I got home and I had these boxes waiting for me. He opens it and they're dolls and stuff like that, or something weird. And I'm like, and you take it in and you put it in your museum, don't you? And he's like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, I could not live like that.
Let me
Now,
tell you something. Is the museum adjacent to his house or part of his house?
it's in his barn.
That's close enough as my.
It's on the property, but he actually, when he had the barn built,
Hmm.
he made sure that there was blessed salt
Right.
in the foundation. He had it
Hmm.
blessed by an actual priest, and
Okay.
everything that gets put in there, it's blessed, sealed,
Okay.
and put into the display. But before the barn was built, it used to be in his basement in his house. I'm like,
Oh, he's
and he said,
brave.
"Hey Richie, you can come and investigate. I'll lock you up in there." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm cool. I'll do it. I know what to expect." But I'm always thinking I couldn't do that. I not investigate, but I mean have these haunted items that have
Right.
attachments, even in human attachments,
Right.
anywhere near me at all.
No, and that's like a concentrate. It's like take your pick.
Yeah,
To me
pick your
that'd be
poison.
like that would be too close for comfort. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Too
I
close for
agree.
comfort.
I agree.
Let me tell you. And sometimes I'm thinking what happens eventually to these items. Because I know that I mean, I've heard of people that they put them up on eBay and
Oh yeah.
and all these things, and then part of me, and the truth is, and this is the point, Rich, and I don't know if you've come across this. Everybody thinks, like you said, the creepy doll. Oh, that's or this or that. And sometimes it could be the simplest, most innocent looking item that could have an attachment. You can
True.
have an easy chair, okay, that man, it looks brand new, and they left it on the curbside. Oh, of course I'm going to take it. That's great. It could be anything. It does not have to be an antique. It doesn't have to be a creepy doll. It doesn't have to be a creepy painting or none of the things that you see now in Hollywood is like, oh, of course, it could be
Well,
anything.
it's like Annabelle.
Yes, right.
Annabelle did not look like that. Annabelle was a
No,
Raggedy Ann doll,
sure.
and of course, leave it to Hollywood to make Annabelle look like this creepy doll that I would never have in my
Right,
house.
like who's gonna buy that doll to begin?
So I remember when that movie first came out, and everyone was like, I think my Annabelle doll is haunted because this and this happened.
Right.
I'm like, nah, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You think that Annabelle doll that you purchased from the store is haunted, but it's not. And by the way,
Right.
the real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll. I have one of those. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah, right. Okay. That's another thing I don't understand. Sometimes you hear people get like all excited because they think they got a cursed or haunted object. It's like, do you realize really what you're asking for? Do you really understand what comes with that?
They don't care.
Okay. And because from what I understand, when they made the movie, the producers of Raggedy Ann they were going to sue them. Like, you can't
Really?
make, yeah, you cannot make the Raggedy Ann doll. The haunted. You got to come up with another version, but you can't. Like, in other words, you're going to kill our
Our
doll.
franchise. Yeah,
Which has
exactly.
been around forever.
Yeah.
And I guess they said, okay, I guess since we have to make up a new doll, we might as well make her as creepy as all get out. which of course is like what we were saying, like who would buy that doll? If there was a doll like that, it'd be like, nah, forget
I
it.
wouldn't.
I wouldn't bring that home. And my kid
Hell,
would be like, huh?
yeah. You remember Chucky the doll?
Of course I remember that.
Chucky the doll. The inspiration behind Chucky the doll was Robert the doll from Key
Yes.
West. Not a
Hmm.
lot of people know this, and they went with it. They created a whole new doll. They knew they were going to have issues if they used an actual
Right.
look-alike of Robert the doll, so they created Chucky.
Right.
And I'm here thinking, even I wouldn't buy Chucky. That's just
Right.
creepy.
But you know what? I have to. It was, and it was. But see the way they portrayed. Remember the original movie of Chucky?
Yeah,
It was an idea. It was.
I liked it.
It
It was
was
well done.
different. It was like, hey, you got a serial killer whose soul takes over this doll, and before you know it, it wants to do what it did as a. I was like, man, that's pretty original.
Yeah.
That's pretty original. And then of course it took off from there. But yeah, I've seen Robert the doll. I've done investigations. As a matter of fact, at the Martello Tower, the museum in Key West, where it's housed
Oh,
part of the time.
the East Martello Museum.
Yes, I'm going to tell
Yes.
you something. You really want me to tell you there what's got stuff? And I don't know if they still have it. They have a display there because there, you know that there were sisters there that had a convent with a hospital.
Yes.
All right. And the time that I was there was a few years back. They had, those old wicker wheelchairs. They had that as, and they had that. And when I walked over there, it was like, holy crap, forget Robert
Robert the
the
doll.
doll. This display, this whole thing, because they did like a section where they had like pictures and memorabilia, and they had that wicker old time wheelchair, and I was like, holy crap, what? I was like, oh, I'm walking over there. I'm gonna just stay next to Robert over here. Who he was in his glass case. Is like, that over there. I'm telling you, sometimes what you least think of, and I couldn't tell you exactly what it was. I'm not saying it was the sisters, but let's face it, they've built one of the first hospitals out there. Um, the common in the hospitals. That's usually what these nuns did. They were either teachers and or nurses, so they
Mhm.
would build these hospitals out there. God knows what was there among all that bric-a-brac that they had in the display case. But yeah,
We
I didn't
investigated it.
know though that, huh?
We investigated East Martello Museum back in 2004
And what did you find
when I
there?
was with South Florida Ghost Team. We were locked up with Robert the doll all night long.
Okay.
Now, everything was fine
Okay.
until someone, not in our team, but people that we were training, decided to do a circle around Robert the doll to
Oh,
conjure Robert the doll. And
why?
the lead investigator and myself walked in on this guy, lighting incense and this and that. I call upon the four corners and blah blah blah, and we're like,
What?
"What are you doing?" Oh, I'm conjuring forth the spirit of Robert the doll. I'm like, why?
I'm
What is wrong
telling
with
you.
you? And that's when activity went crazy.
Sure.
Things started moving, noises, shadow people left and right. We looked in the direction that you were talking about, where
Yeah.
the nuns were, a lot of back and forth. I was like, boss, we should get out of here.
I don't
Because
understand. Don't get me wrong. I can understand that if you're trying to capture evidence and maybe, you've got recorders or whatever, or you're just hoping it's your lucky day and Robert's going to like get up and walk around. I don't know. Whatever.
if he does, I'm punting him.
It's like, oh, but that's different because it's like, how do you think, how sure are you that what you're going to get is Robert? It's there was this one guy, I guessed I had him a long time ago, and he made an analogy and an example, and I was like, he goes, if you throw a phone into a prison yard, who do you think is going to be the one to pick it up? The worst of them.
Of course.
Okay. And when people do that, they're not going to get Robert the doll. They're going to get something that's you're going to wish it was Robert the
Worse.
doll.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, guaranteed, guaranteed. Especially if some I don't know if they thought they were protected or they were doing the right thing, but it's like, but in a place like that, no, it's like, yeah,
That place
there's
has
a lot of
history.
things. It does. Let me ask you, when you were there, did they have those metal figurines?
Oh yeah, in the
Were
tower.
those creepy? I was like, what?
Yeah, I was like, but actually, it wasn't creepy. Me being an artist, I actually found them
Okay.
fascinating. I was taking pictures left and right. I was like,
Right,
oh, that's
yeah.
cool. I wish I could
I
take
got
that with me.
but they were unusual at the
Yeah,
very
they
least.
were. They were. I'll give them that much. And it's funny. I forgot about that because
Yes.
uh, the activity that started happening kind of like distracted me from the tower. And I was like, damage control from that point
Sure.
forward. We kicked the
Sure.
guy out, by the way. And we said, we ain't training you. That's for sure. Because you're bad
Right.
news. You just
Well, let
don't
me
do
ask you,
that.
I could see where he could be a real problem if you go to an investigation where you've got something malevolent, non-human, even if it's whatever, that could. And let me ask you something, Rich, and I don't know
Yeah.
if you come across this because, as sometimes when people walk into hauntings that are dark and intelligent, everybody assumes that because it's dark and malevolent, or they get that it's non-human. And I say, you know what? You could have a human being that was a very dark person when they were alive, and now that they're dead, they're just as dark, but it's still a human spirit. Have you ever come across that in any of your investigations?
Way too often. And in fact, I have a saying that I always tell people because they immediately say demon. And it's not a
Right.
demon, but I tell
Hmm.
them, as in life, so shall you be in death.
Of
So
course.
if you were a happy person, if you were happy go lucky, very positive individual, and you come back to visit your family,
Hmm.
why would I be burning you, poking you, throwing things at you?
Sure.
If you were a belligerent alcoholic, a drug addict, if you were a mean
Sure.
spirited individual, I expect you to be the same in death as you were in life.
Absolutely.
So we have to do testing. In fact, the Bible itself says, test all spirits. And okay, it states test all spirits. Notice it does not include, or it doesn't exclude. It
Hmm.
includes all spirits. So you have to think along the lines of, they knew what they were talking about. They knew that there were human spirits, there
Right.
were angelic spirits, demonic spirits, even nature spirits.
Hmm.
So you have to test them. And I've had a few cases that have involved nature spirits before too. Those
Right.
are interesting. They're always
Yes.
very fascinating.
Elementals. Yes.
Elementals are hard.
I but you
They're hard to figure out, but
and better, it's never a good idea to mess with elementals.
oh hell no, no. I've
No.
learned real quick. There's nothing you can do. There's no religious provocation, invocation you can do.
Nope.
You just have to learn what it is they want and then go from there and give
Yes.
it to them. And activity stops.
Right. You hope.
Yeah.
You hope. It's really. I tell everybody, when it comes to elementals, okay, you don't you just act like, don't ever get their attention, because if once you get their attention, you're gonna wish you hadn't. God,
Yeah.
I tell people like, this is something where they don't mess. You don't mess with them, they don't mess with you. It's like, phew, everything is good. But and I'm gonna say, and I know there's people out there that are gonna say, "Oh, Marlene," I go, sometimes people do an invocation of nature spirits, and their intentions are good. You know what they say about the way to hell is paved with, right?
Yeah.
You have to be real careful with those nature spirits, because they don't have the same moral compass that humans have. They don't
No.
bargain. They don't
No.
bargain. They don't want, well, like, how everybody thinks, well, if I they don't bargain, they don't want your soul, nothing. But if you ever get one of them, it's like, good luck.
They're
Good luck.
neither good or evil. They
They're
are
not. They're not.
neutral.
They're
They're
neutral.
neutral.
Yes.
So here's the thing, when you're dealing with an elemental, you have to realize they have their own set of rules.
Yes.
So let's say you started adding to your home
Mm-hmm.
and started constructing, and you can either wake something up spiritually in
Yes.
your home or the nature spirits because you just encouraged upon their property and tore up grass, tore up dirt, even a bush left or right.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. You can call in 5 bishops and 2 young and old priests. It
Yes.
ain't going to do jack. So what you have to understand is, okay, so if this is not working, and I remember uh, my mentor, Bishop Long, he said he had this case that had him perplexed.
Right.
He kept going to the house. He was convinced it was demonic infestation, and he had to
Mm-hmm.
go there and bless it. And the situation would get worse and worse and worse. He finally, at the time, his mother was still alive. He told, I think it was his grandmother. It was his grandmother because his grandmother was Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, James, have you ever thought that maybe, them tearing out those trees and bushes like you've been giving us in the story, they ticked off some nature spirits? He was like, I didn't think of that. Have them replant the same bushes and trees and see what happens. So he recommended that to them after a week of going back and forth, back and forth. And the moment they did, activity stopped.
You know where I ran across a lot of it, especially in South Florida, and you're going to understand. You know how everybody out there wants to put in a well?
Oh,
Pozo.
yeah.
Yep, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
I
That'll
won't be
do it.
there because that's where frogs hide.
Oh, well, that's right. But and the reason why I say this is that out in South Florida, where people like to water their gardens,
Yeah.
you might have like a regular residential yard, and a bunch of people put in like a well with a pump so that they can irrigate their gardens. That's a South Florida thing. I know in other areas people put wells in, but in South Florida, you get water. You get water from like the city. But
Yeah.
everybody, especially Cubans,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that want their fruit trees, okay, but they don't want to drive up their water bill, will
So they
put
get
in
the,
a well, a pozo, all
yeah.
right? They put a pump on it, and then they
They need their
some
aguacate and their
they're
mango.
right, exactly.
I get
And
it.
of course, and I have run across where sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that well digging has has been a problem for them. Has been a
It's
problem.
always a problem because there's frog demons in there.
Oh yes, and I'm sure they call you in. Oh, it's a frog demon.
I'm
Get
like,
Rich on the line right now, right now.
peace
This is a
out.
specialty. He specializes in this.
Yeah,
You
no.
know, they
Don't listen
say
to Marlene. Nah.
that's like, yeah. All of a sudden, all the cases you get, there's a frog stuff going on.
Oh,
But
hell
yeah,
no.
the sometimes, like, my point is that it doesn't have to be um, the intentions. I say sometimes are coincidental,
Yeah.
but sometimes things happen, and it's usually I want to say though that the problem comes in when people not like that, like an accident, like with the bushes or the well or stuff like that. I'm talking people that actually think that they're going to start invocations against these type of elemental spirits and that they're going to be in control. And it's like you're out of your mind. You are out of your mind.
There.
Like,
How do you when you are drilling down
hmm
and you're dealing with an elemental that deals with water?
right,
Do you realize how difficult it is to calm that down?
right, exactly,
You're going to have to cement the well over. You wasted all these thousands of dollars
right,
to do this, and all for what? Because I would rather lead a peaceful life than to have
sure,
to, wonder what the heck does this elemental have planned for me today?
right. Well, and sometimes there's and some people will say, well, what do you do? Sometimes you could ask permission. Say, I'm going to open this well, and all I want to do is I want to water the plants to make
Yeah.
it beautiful. No harm. Like something as simple as that, and you don't have a problem. And I've even run across it where, of course, we're talking smaller properties where the well and the motor is real close to, let's say, the wall or the side yard. God, wouldn't you know it that room, it becomes
Yeah.
the center, and you're thinking, what is it about this room? Like, what's going on with this one room? Take a walk around, and oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, sometimes a lot of these things have different sources. um, Now let me ask you, when somebody at this point, do you have, what is it, do you have a team that goes in first to determine if it's a regular haunting, and then they back out if they realize it's like an inhuman spirit, or how before it comes to you? How's that?
Well, if you're speaking of the Paranormal Clergy Institute,
Right.
yes, we have teams throughout the United States. Not, I wish we had a team in every state, but unfortunately, we don't. And if a case comes to my attention
Right.
via email, I will try to find someone or a team that is already affiliated with us and is willing to go out and investigate. That's all we really need.
Okay.
Gather evidence,
Hmm.
EVPs, EMF fluctuations, all that stuff, and video, get it back to me. and I will go over the evidence. I will send it to clergy. If I feel this may not be human, I
Okay.
then confer with the clergy, and we discuss, and they're the ones that decide whether it's human or inhuman. I will give them my recommendation, and that's all I can do. It's
Sure.
really up to them to decide whether they should involve themselves.
All right. Let me ask you, since you've been doing this for so long, do you agree? Because I've listened to interviews with other like Roman Catholic priests
Hmm.
where they cite an uptick in cases of actual, not people saying that they've actually find that they are demonically possessed. Have you
Hmm.
also noticed an uptick in numbers?
Uh, yes and no. The
Okay.
validity of whether it's demonic or not is really so obscure,
Hmm.
because so many people now, and you have to think about this logically,
Right.
would rather call something demonic before,
Mhm.
you know, using rationale or
Sure.
common sense and saying, well, maybe it's something else. The cases I've had in the past where a person literally behind their wall to their bedroom, and where the head of their bed was the power box. Do
Okay.
you realize how much EMF that gives off?
And people don't realize what high EMF readings will do.
It can kill you.
Yes,
It's
make you
EMF
hallucinate.
radiation.
It'll give you feelings of being looked, persecution. It'll give you
Yes.
everything. Yeah. Yeah.
The even alarm clock, and I've made sure even to this very day, the alarm clock I have is across from me. I
Hmm.
used to be over my head, and I said, "Oh hell no!" That buries the needle
Hmm.
in any EMF detector. Now I
Sure.
don't use the K2. I use the sense. What was it called? The It was a sensor, something high sensor. I forget what it's called, but it was one
Hmm.
of the original ones that actually had an extension cord,
Yes.
and I prefer using that one because that one's more accurate than the others.
Right.
And I solved the case in less than an hour. It took me 3 hours to get there,
Okay.
but I got there and I started scoping out the whole area. I started, looking at everything, and I realized, the lady was telling me, I feel like something's constantly watching me, and I think it's a demon, and this and that, uh, and my boyfriend, he can't even stay the night
Okay.
because he throws up. I'm like, throws up? What the heck? So I looked around bed and I noticed, and I asked her, "Where do you sleep?" "Oh, I sleep on this side." "Where does he sleep?" "He sleeps on this side." And that's exactly where the clock was.
Okay.
And the alarm clock was burying the needle on my
Isn't that
EMF
interesting?
detector. And I said, let's do this. And I took it and I moved it across, and I said, you, sir, you're spending the night. I want
Right.
you to call me in the morning and let me know how this went. Guess what? For the
Done
first
deal.
time, he spent the night, and they called me all giddy and happy. And oh my
Okay.
God, I didn't throw up. I didn't have headaches. I didn't feel like something was watching me. I didn't feel the demon. Like the demon's gone. What did you do? Moved your
Um,
clock.
Move your clock. And
That's all I
sometimes it
had to
is
do.
as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you point that out. And because I tell everybody, back in the 90s, before the thing with the paranormal shows took off,
Yeah.
if you got a case, people by then they were at their rope's end, and
Yeah.
it was very hush hush. They had already called. They had already gone and called the electrician, or the plumber, or anybody, a handyman. Like by the time you got called in, they had already gone. They had already gone the route of it's an animal scratching in the wall, or the draft or whatever. They had now fast forward 20, 25 years, somebody hears a weird noise and the whole family runs out and sleeps in the car. The ghost. How did you know it was a ghost? Nobody tries to figure out, okay, that it could be something really normal,
Well, I had solved the one case in 30 minutes. They were like, there's that sound. You hear that? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what is that? It's your ice maker.
Oh my god, I love that.
And they were like,
Oh
what
my
is it?
god.
I'm like, let's give it
That's
a few
great.
minutes. And I'm standing by the refrigerator and
See,
I
that's what
hear
I'm
it.
talking.
And I opened the freezer,
Yeah.
and they were like, SOB, I can't believe it. It's been that this whole time. I thought it was a demon. I'm like,
All right.
well, maybe your ice maker's demonic, but
And see, and that's the thing. 25 years ago, that conversation would never have happened because people would have said, "Man, where's that noise coming?" And they would have walked to like figure it out. Now they went straight to not forget the ghost part. It was demonic, you know.
who are you gonna call?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and
And
that's
it's incredible. People, their imagination goes wild on some of these things, and it's like, look,
what
really,
you fear the most, Marlene, is
yes,
what you are going to put energy into and you're going to bring to life.
yes, of
So
course,
let's face facts. What people fear the most is being demonically possessed, not being in control of your own
yes,
body. They're
yes.
afraid because of all the movies that have
Oh,
depicted
sure,
the demons. And yes, they are horrible, horrible creatures and inhuman. But let's face the reality. The reality is that you are more likely to be struck by lightning than to actually come across a demon.
sure.
That's the truth.
And then and even the possession, they say the possession as far as like the possession, that's very rare. They may want to, some people think that it's a common thing, but it's not. It's a rare
No,
thing.
it's very rare.
Uh, and I want to say about the only thing, and I've heard of it, is the people what they call the perfectly possessed,
Oh
which
yes,
are the
perfect
ones that
possessions.
willingly, like,
Yes,
the demon didn't have to like take them over. They were like, sure,
come
you can
right
be my
in.
wingman.
Yeah,
Sure. What do you
I,
need? Yeah.
I had one case like that. I'd say it happened around 2010 and into 2011. And
Hmm.
I then it occurred to me because I was getting warned by all these teams. I'm like, yo, don't go out there. I'm like, why?
Okay.
What's going on? I started reading, and I'm not kidding when I say I read at least 15, and more came in after because word got out that
Right.
National Paranormal Society was going to go and investigate this lady's house. Well,
Okay.
I started, noticing a pattern with her.
All right.
This woman was investigating her own home. She was communicating with whatever she thought was there. She was a big paranormal, show fan,
Uh-huh.
and she unknowingly opened the door to
Okay.
something big bad to come into her home and
Mhm.
into her. So the person that had actually put me on that case was
Right.
John Zaffis. You
Okay.
don't say no to the godfather of the paranormal. It
Sure.
just
So
don't work. So he said, Richie, I need you to go check it out. This lady keeps bothering me. She was even calling someone that was all the way in Connecticut, for God's sakes.
okay.
But John is well known in the paranormal field. And he said, could you go out and check it out? And this is the first case I ever took on for John. And he knew I was a trained demonologist. And he said, go do this. We went. That was, look, one of the worst cases I've ever had. And the reason is it occurred to me
Mhm.
as we left and the car started giving us issues. Our GPS had us turned around going to Tampa when we were supposed to be heading to Miami. I was like, what the hell's going on here?
Okay.
Well, long story short, this woman who had agreed on video to get rid of all 550 EVPs that she
Oh,
had communicating with what it was in her house and in her and gave it to us, and she even said, I hereby give National Paranormal Society the right to own this. She even signed a piece of paper waiver and
right.
everything. We took it, we threw it away when we got to Miami.
Right.
Not even 3 days later, what did you guys get? Did you guys get EVPs? By the way, I want my stuff back.
Huh. Late. Too late, lady.
Wait, what? And mind you, the funny thing is when she spoke, and it actually ticked off my tech because she heard it. I heard it first. I went in with my case manager and she showed us around the house. And when I came back, because I didn't want my medium to be exposed to any of the information,
Right.
the medium and my tech, they were taking all of our stuff out because it was going to be a 3-day investigation. And my medium saw my face and he was taking things out. He was like, Oh hell no, we're going back to Miami.
Yeah. He's like, he already
what,
knew.
what I heard, no, what I heard as she was talking was a medley of at least 15 voices talking
Oh,
behind her. So she'd be saying something like, I'll give you an example. So this is where we have the activity, but as she was saying, this is where we had this activity. You'd hear in unison with
and you're
her
like, oh boy.
voice. I was like, I looked at my case manager, and my case manager was like, what the? And we were like, okay, well, thank you for the tour. And we come downstairs. My medium sees the look on my face. And he's like, we're going back to Miami. Is that what's
Right. Yeah.
happening? Because I don't like the look on your face. I'm like, and he's Puerto Rican. So right
Right.
now,
And he,
and me being Cuban, I'm like, oye, okay, when you go in there, okay,
you're gonna. It's like,
I want you to just listen. I don't want you to look. Just listen. And you know, my tech went in there and she came out.
mhm.
She was like, "What the hell was that?" They
So
had
what? Let
never
me ask you
dealt with
something. Was it
something
just in
demonic.
one room that you could hear those voices, or
No, it was
was
with her.
with her wherever she
She
went?
was possessed. John at the
Oh,
time didn't have all the information.
okay.
He thought she was in
So you call up
oppression.
John. Hey, John. By the way, that lady. Guess what?
I did actually. I called him over. I was like, "You must really hate us." He's like, "No, I know you can handle this. Come on, Richie, you can handle this." I'm like, "You hate us, don't you?" Because I'm sorry, she's not in the oppression stage. This woman is in possession stage. It was only, I'd say, a week or two later that I started realizing it was perfect possession.
Okay.
She didn't want this gone. We got rid of it. We called Clergy in and
Okay.
got rid of it, but
All
she
right.
welcomed it back.
Oh, I was gonna say forget it. If it's perfect possession, that's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. And that's when John told me, and he said, Richie, get your team and yourself out of there. Never go back again. And, who am I to say no to the boss? So,
Well, you know what? And this is the thing that people, because we're geared to, how you see these movies about possession, how this person basically is taken over like against their will, or
yeah,
like I said, wrong place, wrong time. And sometimes it's hard for people to realize that there's people that are perfectly possessed. It's like, you don't have to take me over. I'm there. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Quid pro quo, but you're going to do this for me, riches, whatever. But you don't have to, like, I'm not going to fight you.
it's rare.
A lot of that, sometimes, look into somebody's face and it's like, man, you're a psychopath. But besides that, there's something going, there's something walking with you and it's not on human feet. How's that?
Yeah, yeah,
And you could tell that, and contrary also to what people believe, that the possessed person is like, oh, they're like their heads going around or they're walking. This person could behave very normally, knows what's normal. How's that? As
yeah,
to not call attention to itself,
right.
but then behind the scenes, whatever they have power over, whether it's people, whether it's what they do for a living, whatever, they do some of those malevolent, horrible things, and it's all
Yeah.
because of the perfect possession that they have with them.
Well, it's not even perfect possession. Even if the host is not willing to have this demon or
Hmm.
demons with them, it depends on the type of demon they have. They
Sure.
they could be demons that like to show off. It could be demons that know what you're bringing with it, and they don't want to even, no, oh, I'm gonna become a transient possession now, and
Yes.
bolt, and they do, and that's fine.
Sure.
Here's the problem. Um, when I go there, and I go there with the intent, because there is religious provocation, and there's a huge difference,
Hmm.
not the usual provocation that has run
Right.
rampant throughout the paranormal field, which
Yes.
is ridiculous. And I wish people would stop this. But religious provocation with me and my testing, and I can't go into details as to how we do it, but because then you'd have monkey see, monkey do after
Yes.
watching this.
Right.
Um, the way I go about it, it's one on one. So I'm in a room, okay, with this alleged possessed individual.
Hmm.
And now I'm doing religious provocation to
Right.
draw that demon out, if there is one.
Right.
Let me tell you, this happened 10 years back and it rattled my cage. I'd say actually it was come more along the lines of 15 years ago, because I was with another church at the time. This person, I had told the husband, do not tell your wife my real name. That's one of the things I will expose. Sometimes if it's a case like that, I will talk to the guardian, husband, wife,
Mhm.
whatever they may be. And I said, my name is Frank Black, like Frank Black from the show Millennium.
Mhm.
And I want you to refer to me as Frank Black. When I get there, I'm Frank. Okay.
Right.
But it's a trick. You know, it's mind games. It's psychological warfare. You have to have the, edge going in. I walk in, I walk, this is literally a scene from The Exorcist. I
Okay.
parked this was somewhere in Ocala. There was the only house on that road, and it was like cornfields and God knows what all around.
Okay.
Beautiful house. And the GPS led me right to the house. I parked it, and I grabbed, good old briefcase, and walked up to the gate. They had a white picket fence. Not kidding.
Okay.
And as I walked to the gate, I noticed the second floor, there's someone sitting by the window. And I look up. The only thing I wasn't doing was wearing a fedora. And that image just got up and walked away from the window as I walked through the gate. And I was like, this was a
Okay.
scene out of The Exorcist.
It's like, all right.
Okay. Get to the door, knock on it. And he's like, he was about to say Rich. And I was like, and I went like that. And he's like, Frank, great to see you. Thank you for coming, this and that. Let me take you upstairs so I can introduce you to my wife. Now, this demon wasn't playing around.
Okay.
The moment he opened the door and walked in, and he introduced me, and I put my briefcase down on the table, because there was apparently two chairs and a table by
Okay.
that window that she was at, which was their bedroom.
Okay.
And I said, "Hello, so and so." I can't say her name, and I introduced myself. But one of the things I always recommend, even to those that I train through the church to be demonologists, never look anyone that is allegedly possessed in the eye.
Right.
Never do it. I looked around their eyes. I can
Right.
do that, and I introduced myself as Frank, and this and that, and then not her, but what was with her said, "Oh, we all know that's not your real name, Rich."
Oh. And you're like, here we go.
I was
Forget it.
like,
Cut to
"Excuse
the
me."
chase. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say that, but I was like, it. I kept my poker face, and I pretty much said, inside I was, what did you
Yeah.
just say? But
Yeah.
outside I was like, no, actually my name is Frank. And she's like, if you say so, Mr. Valdez. And I was like, okay. So I open everything up, start taking everything out that I need to. She passed with flying colors.
Yeah, I was gonna say that right there. It was like,
No,
man,
she was possessed.
I bet that
Big
that
time.
we thing they're referring as in the plural, like more than one.
Exactly. And that's, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. I was a test that usually takes 30 minutes tops.
Okay.
Took me 45, because I had
Okay.
to regain my composure. And I'll never forget what that demon, or demons plural, said. They said,
Hmm.
we know we'll see you again, Mr. Valdez. And I was like, well, I don't know why you keep insisting Valdez. I don't know where that name came from. Oh, so you're a liar.
Here we go.
I was like, no. But okay, well, thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Oh, be careful with that sore. I was like, sore. And I didn't think of it. I had this, I'm diabetic type 2,
Right.
and I had a sore, and it
Okay.
was actually flaring up just a few days before I got there. It flared up even more when I left.
Because in that moment, even you didn't think about that.
No.
So it knew something very personal about you.
I went through half a pack of cigarettes. I stopped on the side of the road with, God knows, all these corn, stalks everywhere. And I used my phone and I called the pastor I was working under and I said, "You better get yourselves out here now." I used much more colorful words
I
than
bet.
that. And I said, like yesterday, because this chick is capital P possessed and no. And I'm just gonna
Let
like,
me ask you, did they know the origins of what happened? What that happened to her?
you know, after I did that case and I had already done research, there was speculation that
Mhm.
it could have been Ouija board, tarot cards, it
Okay.
could have been pendulums, and I was like, no, it just doesn't add up. This is something
Right.
she did when she was a kid. We're talking about a 38-year-old woman.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It just doesn't add up. Why now?
Sure.
Now they people will say that that is, they have their own time to attack, and
Yes.
that's fine. I get it, but it just doesn't add up. Come to find out, months later of them
Mhm.
visiting this family,
Yes.
she was involved in a black mass ritual.
There we go.
Yeah,
That's the ticket right there. Oh
blood
yeah.
was shed from her palm,
But that is, so
and
if you're talking blood sacrifice,
yeah,
anything you need to feed with blood, oh,
that's
we're
bad.
talking very, very dark.
So that blood ritual tied her to a familiar, which she had no idea. And I'd say she was 38. This happened when she was 26. So 12 years later,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
decided they're at their happiest. And this is usually a pattern.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this with demonic anything.
Hmm.
It's when you're at your happiest.
Right.
Life is great. Beautiful house. The
Yes.
husband had gotten a raise. She didn't have to leave the house. She was living it up. She was being, you know, a
She's happy.
housewife and taking care of the kids. And all of a sudden, just like that,
That's it.
that's all it
Everything went
took. And we're like,
downhill.
oh, you're happy now? Okay.
Right.
Whack. And that's when
Yes.
whack a mole
Yes.
started.
And that's exactly what you point out because, again, I'm going to revert to Hollywood as an example. Everybody thinks that everything happens right after. Oh, you
Boom.
went to the,
No.
and then the next week, no, sometimes it'll take years when they decide to take you up on that invite.
Yeah,
And then surprise.
exactly.
And this is, yeah. I remember one time I heard this story. There's a gentleman. His name is Dr. Gallagher, and he's older now, but for many years he served as a psychiatrist for the Catholic Church to determine if people were possessed. And he described, he had, at the beginning, he was a very science-based guy,
Right.
and how they convinced him was, hey, all we want to do is determine if this person, uh, psychiatric help is really what they need. But fast forward, and later on he became a believer. How's that? He kept doing that, but he says, and he was describing, there was this one case where they had this woman who apparently had belonged to a coven,
Mm,
and I guess she had decided to get out of it, one of those deals. And the church asked him, look, work with her and let's find out if she, is she got a psychiatric problem? Is her thing, she was a victim of ritual abuse, whatever, find out before we go forward.
hmm.
And they said that he had two colleagues that were working with her. Like, in other words, they said, let's treat her for 6 months, like
Right.
traditional therapy kind of deal.
Right.
And they said at the end of 6 months, they said, look, we're not making headway with her. This is not working, blah, 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 blah. After they back out and they're like, yeah, they compare notes. These guys were both trained psychiatrists, psychologists. I'm not sure what they were,
Hmm.
but they both compared notes, but they didn't tell this to each other while the case was ongoing. They talked about it afterwards.
Sounds familiar. I don't know why.
That
I've read so
when
many
they
case files.
they what was happening is while they're treating her, okay, they both started experiencing weird things at the house, like, you know, noises, stuff falling, and they were suffering these horrific headaches.
Hmm.
Horrific, bad, like stuff, not like I have a headache. It was something that they recognized this is not the norm. Okay. And then they would have, like, it was like a poltergeist kind of feeling, but it was like weird stuff going on in the house and these really, really bad headaches. Once they stopped treating her, all of that stopped. And they kept thinking they were the only ones having this experience. It was only after the fact that they compared notes and they said we were both, and that's what they were like kind of wigged out, because if you want to look at it only from a scientific point of view, how are these two people, okay, that treating this person who might be possessed supposedly, but you're going on the premise that she's not, having these identical experiences, if it's not because there was something supernatural or preternatural attached to her.
It's funny you mentioned this, and there was a case file that I was reading
Hmm.
that involved something very similar to this. There were medical doctors involved. There was a psychiatrist, psychologist involved,
Right.
and the priest and a bishop. Yeah, I know it sounds like the lead into a really bad joke. They walk into a house or a bar, but okay.
Right.
Um, they all were experiencing different phenomenon when they got
Right.
home.
Okay.
And one day, after weeks of dealing with this one possession, because they were trying to catalog everything,
Right.
scientifically, medically, and also religiously, the demon decided to get cocky, and literally when they were all in the room with this individual, with this demon, said, "How's your wife feeling? I know she had a spill the other night. How's this?" And literally started naming all the things that had been going wrong in their life. And they all
Hmm.
stood there with their jaws dropped to the floor going,
Right.
"What in the?"
Yes.
And this was nothing because they, they never were never around her.
Right.
This was a part of the church that was like a house that was off to the church, that they had someone praying over her day, night, day,
Right.
and on. They would step outside, they would go even to the street, they wouldn't even discuss what was going on while they were there. And very much like what you just said, they then realized, holy crap, this and this and this has been happening. And it was like illnesses, spills, things falling, accidents, car accidents. And
Right.
they started piecing everything together because that demon named every single one of the things that was happening to those people.
Or they know, from what I understand, one of the hallmarks when they're looking at to see if a person is possession, besides, that you hear about like the knowledge of foreign land, ancient land, is that this person will have knowledge about personal stuff that it's not like, now on the internet you can look up stuff. No, no, no. It will talk about things, personal things that there's no way for this person to have that knowledge about what you said, whether
Exactly.
whether that sore, like you said, or and as a matter of fact, that Dr. Gallagher, that he said that when he got into it, that was one of the first things that like kind of like totally wigged him out from his like, this is science based, mental that idea that all of this what they call possession is in reality always a mental illness kind of thing,
Right.
was when he went to examine somebody on behalf of the church, and this person said something to him that it was like, there's no way that this person could know this about him. Absolutely not. And he was like, okay, that
Because
kind of threw.
in situations like that, let's say that there's more than one demon in this person.
Right.
In fact, the very first exorcism that ever happened was Jesus Christ uh, cast out of a man, Legion. Now, Legion,
Right.
as people should know, is 1,000. So there was 1,000 demons in this one person. I want you to think about that. That's a
Right.
crowded body.
Yes.
And they said, no, no, no. Please, if you're going to cast us out, place us, put us in these pigs. And
Hmm.
he did. Those pigs went off a cliff and drowned. So what I find fascinating is, people think, okay, we have all these demons, and let's say that it's a perfect possession. One, it only takes one or a few. Let's say there's five involved in this case. Five,
Hmm.
let's take five out of the 1,000. All
Right.
right. Those five are going to follow these people home because I want intel
Right.
on what's going on
Sure.
in their lives, and they're going to report back. So the head chief demon that is, got the posse together in the first place is the
Running the
one that's
show
going
kind of
to,
deal.
exactly. This is the one that's going to say, so fulano mengano, this happened to you, and this happened to you, and this and this. And this is how they get you.
Sure.
They are hoping that, not praying, but they're hoping
Hmm.
that when they do say that to you, that fear, that emotion you feel
Yeah, of course.
is enough to lower your defenses. They can get into you.
Or at the very least, just say, I'm out of here right now. Because it's, how can I say, if everything else is subjective, but when somebody tells you something about intimate about yourself that there is no way
Nobody
they
else
know it,
knows. Exactly.
that will shake you very
Yes.
thoroughly. All right. Very much so. And then talk about fear, that'll do it right there.
And that's how this woman 15 years back rattled my cage.
Hmm.
She knew my name.
Right.
She knew my first and last name. She knew I had a sore that and it was on my leg. And I'm
Right.
thinking, how the heck did, and I started thinking,
Sure.
oh yeah, that's when 30 minutes down the road, it rattled my cage enough. I got out. I called when I finally had service, because good God, it was hard to get service. And I called my pastor and I said, you better get yourself and the elders over here ASAP. By the
Okay.
way, I am staying in Ocala. I'm going to find some Roach Motel
Right.
and I'm going to do some praying. I am going to be meditating. I'm going to be reading the Bible, because let me tell you right now, I'm rattled. He prayed with me, which
Right.
helped a lot. But when you've been rattled like that,
Sure.
you need to take a break. It doesn't matter where you're at.
Of
Do
course.
not attempt to go back home, because you need to recenter yourself. And this
Yes.
is something that's been trained, I've learned in training. And oftentimes I always ask these people that are self-proclaimed demonologists, so if you ever have your cage rattled, what do you know to do? Do you know what prayers to use? And they're like, what are you talking about? And it ticks me off, because I'm thinking to myself, you people are the ones that give the real ones, like myself,
All right.
that have done proper training, have for years, and still do to this very day. In fact, this right there,
Okay.
one of
That's the
many,
one
many,
by, yes, yes. I know which one
Rosemary
that is.
Ellen
Guiley. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. As a matter of fact, she
Gilly.
passed away a couple of years ago.
Yes, Rosemary Ellen Gelly. She wrote that one. There's another one that
Yes. I have a copy of that.
Michelle Belanger wrote,
Yes.
and I collect all these books, but I'm
Hmm.
also one that I'm looking to actually collect. There's a series of 6 demonology books, or demon books, books
Hmm.
on demons, that is only used by the Roman Catholic Church. But to find the actual real hardbacks, it's hard to
Hmm.
find. In fact, I
Sure.
think you can find one through 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is always missing, and 6 is always available. 5 is always missing, and I've looked for it on eBay. I've looked for it in bookstores. I've looked for it everywhere. It's hard to find. So until I can actually find those books, and I'm always seeking out books.
Well,
Knowledge
you know
is
what?
really
I'm going to tell you the story because I wrote an article on it, and when I read it, it was like, man, there's a doctor. He already passed away, by the way. John
okay.
Patterson. During the 50s, he used to work. Oh, Marlene, Massachusetts or New Hampshire, one of those
Okay.
states. He was always involved in working with hospitals, sanitariums, blah 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 blah. Fast forward into the 60s, and he decided to do a book on case studies where he believed that a lot of these cases were tied into demonic possession. All
Mm-hmm.
right, and this talk about having case studies. This man really had a lot of case studies. Back in coming to the 70s, he's ready to publish this book. All right, and he talks about in the article where he started shopping around. Remember, this early 70s, you remember, is when Rosemary's Baby came out, The Exorcist, The Omen, blah, 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 blah. So he says he starts shopping around for a publisher, and he says that he kept turning down. He says because there was too many people making money out of this devil stuff. In
Right.
other words, they did not want to, he couldn't find anybody to publish a book talking about the dangers of, you know, doing whatever, dabbling in the occult. And remember, this is a guy who's a doctor. So he was going to use case studies,
Hmm.
he says, of people. In other words, not, well, I observed, it was based on fact. In other words, it was a good source where people would read this and go, man. Finally, he found somebody was going to publish the books. He was going to do like 5 or 6 volumes. All right. I found the article where, when an author does like a kickoff, like, hey, I'm going to be releasing these books, and there's going to be one of 6 books, I think it was.
Yes.
All right. Guess what? I cannot find those books anywhere.
I wonder
Not
if
for
it's the
love or
same
money.
one. Was this in the 60s? 65?
Uh,
61, 65.
Dr. Earl Patterson. Here we go. I've still kept his stuff because, to me, it's like, let's put it this way. I'm pretty good about finding books, old books, even out of print books. That's like my specialty. And back in 1979 was when he basically made the announcement that was called Possessions, documenting the dark side of human nature. All right.
Okay.
And this is when basically he was talking about, I'm going to be releasing these books, and it's going to be the one of 6. All right. And then he had found a publisher. He talks about in a prior article how he couldn't find anybody to publish it. And then it's like it disappeared. The books disappeared. References. I mean, I've tried to, ISBN, the obviously the author's name, any type of reference to any of the articles, because he was going to break it down, the 6 volumes, into different things. I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. Dr. Earl Patterson.
I sent that to my producer and manager
Meh.
to look it up.
Tell tell her
Because
I believe me, and I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty good at finding stuff, even if it's out of print, that I'll say like, hey, you know what? There's one copy and it's $400. I couldn't find anything, anything.
I actually found these books that I
Uh
was
huh.
talking about,
Right.
but I couldn't find number 5. And I was like, okay,
Okay.
I need number 5. I can't, it's like, think of getting all of the Harry Potter volumes, but you have book 3 and 5 missing. And
Right.
while you're at it, they remove a few chapters out of those books. Why even bother? So,
Right.
I basically, I'm one of those. I'm very fickle. When it comes to a book, I will read. I will sit down and read that book. I will finish a book that took someone months. I'll finish it in a week. Actually, the way I am is I read 3 books at
Right.
the same time, and I make sure that I stop off at after 2 chapters. I mark it and I go to the next. And if I take notes or I highlight it, because I always got to have my highlighters
Right.
right here, and I go ahead and highlight it, it means I'm going to go back to this because I need to actually look into this a little bit more and do more
Sure.
research outside of what the book is offering.
Right.
But that's my life. So oftentimes, getting back to how this all got started, you have all these people, self-proclaimed demonologists, and
Mm-hmm.
I think this all got started back when it became very popular.
Right.
And to investigate, paranormal things.
Sure.
People, moms, pops, brothers, sisters, friends started getting together and investigating. Now, mind you, I was investigating long before this got on TV.
Right.
I was doing this on my own. I got
Mm-hmm.
involved with a team because they were actually involved with TAPS.
Okay.
and I knew Taps, because of their show, Ghost Hunters,
Mhm.
and I wanted to learn, and I joined a team.
Okay.
It was then that all the other shows started, one by one by one by one,
Sure.
popping up, and then the word demon came out. Demonologist,
Mhm.
priest, exorcism. And I was like, okay, so the approach that people took, let's face facts. If you really want to talk to somebody, anybody
Right.
that knows what they're talking about when it comes to the paranormal, you would reach out to Hans Holzer. He was a
Right.
parapsychologist. He was a professor. The man he was well trained. He
Mhm.
had a degree. You go
Right.
to a parapsychologist.
Right.
Now, if you go to a parapsychologist and they choose to investigate your case, you just lucked out. But now, all of a sudden, everybody and their mother is a paranormal investigator.
Oh, of course.
You
Yes.
take that same approach and apply it to something that's theological, like demonology, exorcisms, and people will be like, that's what's the problem? Why can't I call myself a demonologist? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. And I've already, given you
Sure.
some of my
Mhm.
experiences, but I'll tell you why. If someone's looking for a demonologist and you have someone on your team that claims to be a demonologist, but they really don't know, they've maybe read half a book or one book on demonology,
Right.
and you say, well, this sounds demonic, and you don't even know what you're looking for when it comes to anything demonic,
Exactly.
and you send that person in that has no formal training whatsoever from the
Oh,
church, you
yeah.
just made things a lot worse for that individual.
Absolutely.
And you also placed your team and in danger,
Sure.
because you don't know what you're messing with. You're messing with angels, fallen angels. Yes, we call
Mhm.
them demons, whatever, but
Right.
let's face facts. Just because they're fallen doesn't stop them from being what they were, angels. They
Right.
still are angels that existed long before mankind was created. I want you
Exactly.
to think about that for a second, Marlene. You're dealing with a race of spiritual creatures that were existing long before Earth was created, long before humankind was created. You mean to tell me they don't know jack squat about you?
Of course not. And but
They
people get
do.
this
They do.
confrontational thing, where you see them and it's like they think that I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna lay down the law. And it's like, okay, sure.
That's nice. Will is a good thing. But let me tell you, it's not you
Of
that is
course.
taking this on. It's what you bring with you. And if
Of
you don't know
course.
that, if you go in saying, "Yeah, I'm a demonologist, I'm going to handle this," I
No.
got news for you. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on this. There's often times, and I had to correct this one gentleman, quite frankly, because I was like, stop, please stop. He was trying to impress me. He knew I was a demonologist, the real thing, and
Right.
he went in and he said, in the name of Jesus, I command you to leave. And I was like, what? And I looked at him and he did it again. I was like, wait, stop, please. I beg you. And he says, why? What's going on? I said, can we step outside, please? This was just a simple infestation.
Right.
And I said, you do realize that when you say, I command you in the name of Jesus to leave, you are giving an open invitation to whatever may be there
Yeah.
to take over you, because you're
Yep.
saying I. No.
Hmm.
And I corrected him and I said, when you do that, and I know you mean it, I can feel it, I get it, and
Right.
you're invoking, you know, verses, say, Jesus Christ commands you to leave. Leave yourself out of this altogether.
Exactly.
Say, Jesus Christ commands you to leave. Because the moment you say, I, you just welcomed whatever is there to enter you.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's the mistake that a lot of these rank amateur individuals that don't know what this is. This is not ghost hunting. This is not paranormal.
And I'm glad you point that out and you differentiate.
You have
This is
to.
not. This is
This
not.
this is the thing that bugs the hell out of me. They approach it like it's a ghost. No, this is like comparing a kitten to a lion that hasn't eaten for a week, and they just locked you in that room with that
And you're like,
starving lion,
kitty, 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 come
and
here, kitty.
roar, you're dead. And
Yeah,
they don't get it. They
yeah.
don't get it.
Hmm. And then when stuff goes south for them, as far as like you said, things start happening to them at home, and things like that. They don't understand. Um, what how did that happen? It's like, well, you just said, come on down. I'm ready to go with you toe to toe. And sometimes people, they're not ready for that. At least they don't understand what
You
it is,
can't
what they're
approach that.
dealing with.
Look, there's one way. It, Marlene, right now you go to the doctor, and
Hmm.
you've had these headaches that you can't get rid of for 2 weeks.
Right.
Which doctor are you going to go to? Are you going to go to your medical doctor, or are you going to hope your medical doctor sends you to a neurologist
Right.
or a proctologist?
Let's put it this way: you go to a proctologist, you need to get a new a new main doctor. It's like,
That's the point I'm trying to make. If, God forbid, you have a tumor and it's causing you these headaches, and they
sure,
send you to a proctologist, we got problems,
sure, of course.
because a proctologist is going to basically handle your
It's gonna be
behind.
like, yeah, it's like, what the how? So you're here to
Exactly.
see me, but you got a headache? It's like,
It, it's not a butt ache, it's a headache. But
exactly,
okay, why am I here again?
exactly.
And people don't realize. So I've seen way too much of this over the years. And recently I noticed someone that they're not even from here, but just because they were on a show, all of
Hmm.
a sudden they're a demonologist. I'm like, wait a minute, you've been a paranormal investigator this whole time, and now because you're on one show,
Yes.
you're a demonologist. I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
I find that fascinating. And mind you, I've been doing this for well over 30 years. How did you become a demonologist overnight?
Right, because they get thrilled with how can I tell you, the glitterati of it, because they get fed into that paranormal show thing, and I go, you know what? Some of these shows, basically, they're produced, for entertainment purposes.
Yes.
They sometimes they you don't see the how can I say it, the reality of what s- might happen in some of these cases if there's a legitimate haunting. Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes even after they leave, that it makes it look like everything was taken care of. Not necessarily. It's just that they don't want to revisit it because you know they need to produce something that's 45 minutes worth of entertainment, and have it have some type of conclusion. And some people think that it's like that. And how can I say that they're going to be part of the show, but in real life, where everything gets resolved somehow. And then when things visit them at home, then they're like, wait a minute, I didn't see this part in that TV show. where, where did this come in from?
You know, and to this individual, he seems like a nice guy.
Hmm.
But while Poppy's been gone, and I'm back
Hmm.
and forth in Utah,
Right.
Miami, and Utah, he's taken over the landscape of Florida. He's become Mr. Popular paranormal investigator. Now, all of a sudden, demonologist.
Okay.
But Poppy's home now, and
Uh-huh.
we'll see. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm not looking for any
Would you care to
confrontation.
name this person, or
No,
shall he remain like Voldemort, unnamed? Or
no.
okay.
He of whom we shall not speak of right now, because
Right.
I'm not about the drama. But
Okay.
if I do come across this person while I'm here,
Okay.
we're gonna have a few words, and it's not gonna be like, "Hey, man, let's step outside." No, 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 nothing like that. I'm a very peaceful individual, but I'm
Okay.
very upfront.
Okay.
And if I speak to you about
Hmm.
something I know about,
Okay.
you better be able to come back at me with some of that knowledge you now claim,
Right.
this thunder you're stealing wrongfully, calling yourself something you're not. You better be able to back it up.
Right. Well, because of course, to the layperson, you say certain things and you sound knowledgeable, but I guess to you, you're going to be like, wait a minute, hold it, hold it. What is that?
It's going to take a minute for me to pull back the Cuban in me, but
Sure.
I can do it. I've been
Uh,
Americanized. I was born and raised here 53 years, and it is what it is. I put my time in. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm an expert. No, no, no.
right.
In fact, that's another thing I hate nowadays, that the shows actually put out their paranormal expert. I'm like, de
Right.
cuando? Since when?
Exactly.
And even John Zaffis, which I consider to be an expert, he will tell you, I never want to be called a paranormal expert. And he's been
Right.
doing this for over 50
And I
years.
tell everybody, because you'll have people I say, look, you can read all the books you want, you can watch all the shows you want, whatever. Field work is field work is field work. Nothing will ever replace field work, which means you're going to go on investigations that are boring,
Oh,
that
yeah.
you're going to be like, or nothing's
Mhm.
there, or, but that can never replace. I don't care how many books you read, how many TV shows you look at. Field work is really where you learn it, and that takes time. It takes time. There's no shortcut to field work. I mean, if
But
you're really
there's always
serious about it.
shortcuts. Come
Oh
on,
well,
Marlene. You
well,
know what I
yeah,
mean? We're
you
talking
can
about people that,
you can
what?
say people. I mean, but yes, and see, this is the thing that I don't understand, especially somebody that's saying they're the demonologist. How do they handle when they get to a case that it truly is dark and malevolent and sinister, and you've got a full blown either demonic infestation, whether it's obsession, oppression, even if it's not outright possession, or you've got at least influence.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Whichever way you look at it, how do they handle that? It's all of a sudden you're not an expert anymore.
No, that's the problem. They get in. It's like they just stepped into dino poop, and they're way above their head, and they're
Yeah.
trying to get out of that dino poop as quickly as possible, because they're like, what the hell was I thinking when I said that? They weren't. They
Okay.
got blinded by the glitz and glamour of, oh my god, my 15 minutes of fame on a show. And I'm like, okay, you want 15 minutes of fame on a show?
Hmm.
I put 3.5 hours in for a haunting. Okay.
Hmm.
This is, oh, I'd say 7 years back, something like that.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I'm finally going to be on a TV show. Wasn't looking for it, just
Right.
happened. Got on the show, and I put 3.5 hours in of interview and questions and blah blah blah. You know how long I was on there?
15 minutes.
7 seconds.
Okay. It's overshot it. Sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
boy, did you overshoot it. Because a minute I would have been happy with. Now, mind you, 7 seconds out of three and a
yes.
half hours of taping,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm thinking to myself, okay, so who are they gonna pick for my recreation? And I was like, what is that? So they picked this really small dude,
Okay.
skinny. Okay,
All
I mean
right.
like a twig. He had a crown of hair going around his head, how a full on beard. Okay, not even
Okay.
my tea. Okay, he had a
Okay.
full on beard, and he was like, Lucy, I think this is demonic, and we have to leave now. We must evacuate this area right now. He sounded like Ricky Ricardo. And
I
I'm thinking
love
to
it.
myself,
Love it, Lucy.
what in the hell? What is that bicharraco that actually they
Right.
pulled out of a garbage can to play me? Doesn't look
Oh,
anything like me.
this was your stand-in. This is who
This
you
was this was the actor they picked to recreate me, and I'm like,
wait a minute. How did I
wait a
end up
minute.
looking like that?
I told the producer, pick Vin Diesel. I know I don't look like Vin Diesel, but at
But man,
least
yeah,
come on, man. They
right, do
picked this. I'm 5'10".
right.
They put some 5'3" dude.
It's so funny.
Chronicle. I wanted to feed him Cuban food because he looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks,
Yeah, it's like
and he looked nothing like me. And he had this Ricky Ricardo accent, and it ticked me off. I
right.
was like, I'm embarrassed now. All of a sudden, I was privileged
Uh-huh.
to be picked for a show. Late 2021 into 2022, did filming for it, 6 episodes.
Right.
It'll be released later on this year, and
Okay.
I'm happy to say that the guy they picked to play me,
Did they do better?
the guy looks like someone that you would see in Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got the beard going. He's like, All right. I was
Okay.
like, okay, I like this guy better
Yeah.
than this, I don't
Yeah.
know. It looked like a buzzard that they dressed up and
And he's
said,
like,
"This is
man,
Rich
come on.
Valdez." I'm like, "No, that's not Rich Valdez,
No,
even on a bad day."
right. He's like,
So,
what?
but the
There was a poor,
representation is
poor
important.
casting there, huh? They were
God, the
scraping the
casting
bottom of
is
the barrel.
horrible. Boy, no, they went underneath the barrel.
Hey, we're on a budget. We need some. This is. Hey, dude, the budget doesn't get any. But that's it. That's the best the budget can do. Sorry.
It was bad. It was bad. And look, I get it. You get the glitz and glamour. You get
Right.
the people paying more attention to you when all of a sudden they see your face for 7 seconds on a show, and they
Uh
see your
huh.
other teammates too, and then all of a sudden you're being asked to be on TV or not TV, but you know
Right.
podcasts and interviews, and you're asked to go to this event and this convention, and it happened. That's
Right.
fine, but this is going to be on a much larger scale when it happens. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to expect. And I'm like
Right.
terrified because I'm a very private, very keep to myself kind of individual. And in fact, I've actually taken the advice of the producer. If you have a lot of friends on your, social media platform, I'm not going to
Right.
name it. Start removing the ones that you really don't know, because those are the ones that usually start drama. So I went from 848 down to 560 something
Boy, you
since
did away
last
with a
year.
lot of people.
Oh, hell yeah. I didn't even know who they were. I'm like, how did you get on my page? Who are you?
Exactly. It
What are you?
happens.
Where do you live? They live in,
Exactly.
in Taiwan. They live in
Yes. Yeah. All of a
Brazil.
sudden, whenever you look at something, it's like, wait a minute, who is this person? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is so funny. But Rich, let me tell you something. So when is this show going to be out? You this year? So
I
this
can't say
sometime?
exactly when. It'll be towards the end of the year. I can say
Okay.
that.
All right.
And it's got a few people that
Okay.
people one of them that's got a good cast.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that I'm happy with the cast that they got together. I was the last one to get in there. It was meant to happen. The
Okay.
universe just opened up and said, "Bam!"
Okay.
Because I wasn't looking for a show. I
Right.
was content to start my show this year. The
Mm-hmm.
podcast, Greetings from Beyond Radio, and we've been doing good. We've had John Zaffis, Beth
Right.
Ezzo, Brian J. Kano, lots of individuals on the show, and there's more to come.
Mm-hmm.
And my co-host Vicky and myself, we love radio, and we devote 2 hours of our
Okay.
life every week. And I'm just happy doing that. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, this opened up, and I'm like, oh crap! I think I'm gonna have a lot of people, visiting my
Well,
my podcast after the show is
like
released. But you know
of
what? The
course.
more the merrier, whatever. I welcome
Absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. People come and go, and then you get your people that become your followers, and they tune in and stuff like that, and that's usually the way it works. But there's always an audience out there. There's people that sometimes at this point they might not be interested in the subject matter, and then something happens to them in 5 or 6 months, they become interested. There's always a
Yes.
revolving door of potential people that to start tuning in, as far as especially the subject matter coming, like you said, from somebody that's done it, that's really seen it, that's been around it for years.
Boy, have I seen
Well,
it.
you know.
Oof.
Anyway, Rich, you know what? I'm gonna ask you because, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna send you later on a copy of the PDF from 1979 because I cut it. I do a lot of research for my articles and my books on this doctor. If you ever come across the books, let me know. As a matter of fact, I'm going to point this out real quick. He even said that when he was writing the books, he had put them like on he had somebody transcribing them. When
Okay.
when you
Okay.
tape them, he said he had two women because these were ladies quit on him while they were listening to it, and a third one had to go in for psychiatric help.
Wow.
I mean, he was talking about all the trouble he had even before he got to the public publishing stage.
Hmm.
Okay, I think you're going to find it really interesting because of the field. Because honestly, I ran across him strictly by accident. As far as, like I said, this was basically involvement in that. Like I said, prior to Rosemary's Baby and on The Exorcist in the early '70s, when back then it wasn't not like what it turned after.
Right.
You know, and very like I said, and I'm a big admirer of case studies. You know, as far as people that, how can I say, that they're originally looked at for being anything but a possession.
Right.
And it turns, and all of a sudden, that's what it ends up being.
There's a gentleman that I actually saw his interview. I got to find out his name. It escapes me right
Mm-hmm.
now. I saw it 4 years ago. It fascinated me because he's an actual psychiatrist,
Yes.
and he worked for 30 years in psychiatry, and he worked in a mentally insane in
Mm-hmm.
prison.
Oh boy.
Now, these are the dangerous ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, he was one day he experimented because he noticed that the ones that were schizophrenic always wore headsets just like this, and
Mm-hmm.
they needed to listen to something else, music or something else other than the voices they were hearing.
Right.
He started discovering as he interviewed all of them, because he has to, he has to
Right.
administer medication and therapy and whatnot, that the
Right.
voices they were hearing were not in there. It was out
Outside,
here.
don't come from outside of themselves.
Hence why they had these on.
Right.
And I it escapes me how and why he thought of using Psalms 23.
Okay.
And he said, "Do me a favor. I'm just curious. Read this and tell me how you feel afterwards." Well, afterwards, the guy came back a day later and he said, "Voices stopped." Really? So he made copies, and he literally
Mm-hmm.
started handing out copies, like with the lanyards,
Right.
with this verse, Psalms 23, to all of his schizophrenics
Okay.
in there. The voices stopped.
Oh wow. That is
It's
what a great story that
powerful.
is.
Think about
Yes.
this. Now,
Yes.
one day, unsuspectedly, he's sitting in his office, and one of them came storming through the waiting room where his secretary said, "Excuse me, sir, you can't go in there."
Right.
Walked in through his door, sat down in front of him like this, and just looked at him. Now, mind you, this is someone big. He's
Right.
a homicidal maniac. He's killed
Right.
people. He's
Yes.
afraid. He's like, "Can I help you?" And this voice that was not his coming out
Here
of
we
this voice,
go, baby. Let's hear this.
he said, or it said, I should say,
Uh-huh.
"You need to stop messing with our food source."
Oh,
He was like,
I mean,
"Food source? What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about. Take those lanyards away. It needs to
ah,
stop."
let me tell you.
And he was like, "Okay." And then all of a sudden, the man, from what he described, the man's head went, and he heard a buzzing coming from behind him and over him, through the ceiling, over where he was,
Mm-hmm.
behind the doctor, and into the trash can that was beneath his desk. And he heard it. It was like a buzzing in his trash can. And he's like, "What is that?"
Mm-hmm.
When the buzzing stopped, the guy snapped out of it. And he was like, "Oh, hello, Doctor so and so. I forgot his name.
Right.
What am I doing here?" And he
Mm-hmm.
just got up and wandered away.
Yeah.
So he had an agent, this demon or demons that were feeding off these mentally ill
Sure.
individuals.
Sure.
Or were they mentally ill? Because
Yeah.
now you have to start thinking, is this a misdiagnosis, hearing voices? Or is this how they hide
Of course. Of
behind the
course.
mentally ill? And his his supervisor called him into the office and he said, "Look, I don't know what you're doing." And instead of, you know, complimenting him, he reprimanded him. And he said,
Hmm.
"You need to stop whatever it is you're doing, because now we can't give the medication out anymore. I want you to think about this,
Oh.
because they're fine. They're normal. They don't hear the voices anymore. What'd you do?" "I just handed this lanyard out with Psalms 23. Get it all back. We need to give them the medications." Because that's how
Mhm.
pharmaceuticals works.
Exactly.
They don't want to fix the person.
No, they don't want to treat you, not cure
They
you.
don't want they want to treat the symptoms not what causes it.
Of
So
course.
he was on to something. Now, what I found amazing about this interview, and I got to look it up,
Mm-hmm.
he claimed up and down that he he never said the word demon.
Sure.
He said this thing or things, called them food source. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that to be very fascinating because they really are.
Like a
Being in that
parasitic.
state, a parasitic, yes. Though you took the words right out of my mouth. Someone
Mm-hmm.
I know and hold in high regard, Paul Eno.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Uh,
yes, I love Spike. Paul is great.
Paul is amazing, but he himself was studying to be a Jesuit
Yes,
priest.
yes.
And one day he just had an epiphany that this was not for him. He actually worked with the Warrens.
Mm-hmm.
And he himself, I've had him on my show. In fact, I'd like to have him back on my show again. Um, he refers to them as parasitic entities.
Yes, he does.
They feed off of the negativity that you have in your life. Let's say it's
Mm-hmm.
depression. Let's say it's mental illness. Let's say you just have a cluster of so many things going on in your life. They're
Sure.
going to feed off of this.
Yes.
It's energy. They need
Yes.
it. You're a food source,
Yes.
much like what this gentleman had to go through
Well,
being accused of.
let me tell you something, Paulino. I'm sure. I don't know if you've spoken when you've spoken to him. He tells you about that first case that he was on. This was when he was still in the seminary.
Yes.
Prior
The
that he
cat?
basic the one that he saw that was a little girl that
Yes.
he was asked to. I mean, the house was full of people, and he actually saw levitation of objects and stuff like that. And this was, basically he ended up there like tell
He was
he
with the
was
Warrens at the time.
right.
Yes.
He went there and he said he saw stuff that even then it was like I can't disbelieve what my
Yeah.
eyes are seeing
Yeah.
kind of deal. And then of course later on, he whatever he was involved with. But yeah, yeah, I love speaking to Paul. But let
Paul's
me
amazing.
and I'm going to tell you because of some of the work I've done before, and I'm not talking about the paranormal stuff. I know exactly what that guy's talking about. I have looked into a person's eyes where there's a vacancy there. There's it's hard to
Don't look too
explain.
much into their eyes, though, because
No, I know.
that's one way.
Well, I was in a situation where I had to like when you meet somebody. This and it wasn't. There wasn't a paranormal. It wasn't a paranormal kind of scenario. It wasn't a paranormal investigation or anything like that. And you you look and then you meet somebody and you look in their eyes and you're like, oh boy, oh, and it's very hard to describe, but there is something missing. How's that? I don't
Hmm.
know how to, but it'll like what that gentleman was talking about when this person came
Walked
in,
in. Yeah.
walked in. I've seen that more than once, so I know exactly what they're talking about. And there's a difference. How's this? There's a difference between a look of a crazy person and that.
Yeah.
There is. There is.
Vacancy.
There's
There's
a
a vacant.
vacancy there. There's a
Yeah. There's a
vacancy there.
vacancy sign up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like a human vacancy. Like it's like and I'll tell you what. And there's something in the human body, which by the way, we are the best instruments. Forget any of these other instruments. If you attenuate your body, there's something in your body that goes, like, anti-life, anti-matter, there's a part of you that goes, like vibrates like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I need to like get, and
It's fight or flight, one or the other.
yes, exactly. Again, Rich, it has been wonderful to talk to you, and I could talk to you and talk to you and talk to you a lot. But I'm hoping that you're going to come back. I'm going to send you that PDF, and if you ever run across those books, I would love it.
Of
Okay,
course.
because I'm always searching for it, and once my article publishes, then I'll send you a copy of it. But that one that was where the guy in 1979 says, "Look, I don't even want to talk about it because a bunch of stuff happened to this poor man who was trying to publish these books based on his case studies." And
And little did he know. Yeah.
little did he know his intentions were good. Again, it has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Besides the show, is there anything else that you've got coming up? What, by the way, for my podcast listeners, what's your website?
Well, I really have no website right now, but if people want to follow me, the best way to follow me would be go to Greetings from Beyond Radio on YouTube.
Okay.
Subscribe there, and we have a show every Wednesday between 6 to 8 p.m. In
Okay.
fact, this past Wednesday, we
Hmm.
interviewed Yvonne Mason, who
Okay.
wrote Silent Screams, and we were
Okay.
talking about Gerard Schaefer, the
Sh-
serial killer here in Florida back in
Yes,
the early
absolutely.
70s.
Yes.
And let me tell you something, that is, I will always say this, I'm not scared of the dead. I'm more scared of the living,
Mhm.
because that man, and you know what, that thing, what he did,
Yes.
destroying those families by killing and torturing these
Yes.
girls, is horrible. That in itself is
Well, you know what?
demonic.
I've been out there, the so-called devil tree out there in Port St.
There's
Lucie.
many devil's trees.
Yeah,
He
there's
used a lot of them.
well, because back then when he was running around, that used to be very desolate, and his thing was torture. He
Yes,
wasn't into the, and they have a bunch of cold, even though he was done away, they killed him in prison. There's a lot of cold cases where they think he was a culprit, but of course, unless they get a DNA match, and that's the thing people don't realize, especially these cases that are dating from the 70s and the 80s.
they didn't
If
have DNA
if
matches back then.
if even if every once in a while somebody will open a box and go, "Hey, it's the evidence from the case of 1979," and hopefully maybe they packaged it, and and I'm sure they have DNA from him. I'm positive of it.
Well, DNA from him, but DNA really from the victims? Not really.
Yeah,
That's
sometimes see, this is the thing, and because that's one of my other passions, is that they've gotten so good at the DNA, that stuff that maybe a few years ago they would say, we cannot get anything off of this, nothing. They've been able sometimes to scrape, but the point is that though a lot of the stuff was chucked out, these old
yeah,
cases,
yeah.
they become old, and they say, hey, no, forget it. And they still think that a lot of these cold cases from around that time period were the handiwork of Schaefer.
Schaefer, Yvonne believes that Schaefer actually got started in his teenage years in Georgia.
Yes.
And when they made their trek, with the family to Florida, Fort
Hmm.
Lauderdale to be exact, he continued. And that is scary, because that means
Yeah.
that between Georgia and Florida, which they're right there,
Sure.
he killed a lot of people. Now he only got convicted for 2,
Sure.
but they claimed 35, but now
Yes.
they're saying there could have been even more.
Sure.
So I I think that show was an eye opener for me, and I was actually horrified doing research for that one particular show over Schaefer to begin with, because the things he did. I mean,
Have you ever seen some of his paintings?
yes, unfortunately, and we
They're
didn't
real.
post that.
They
I don't
they're
want to
they're they're
post it.
they're pretty graphic. They're pretty horrible when
Extremely
you look at
graphic,
that. It
and he
if I,
did do it. He
oh
did it.
no, well of
He,
course, but I'm saying when you look at that, this man, but yeah, just without knowing the particulars of his childhood per se, was he
I do.
produced? Was he born this way? I mean, they talk about his teenage years when he was doing that pseudo rape with a girlfriend
Yeah.
and tying up. And that I think I believe, I can't remember if maybe his dad had a problem with alcohol.
Yes, his
You
father was an
know,
alcoholic. He was I think he was a salesman.
right?
So he was barely ever home. He was always traveling throughout the
Yeah,
states.
but
He was born in Wisconsin,
right.
and they
Okay.
made their way down to Georgia and then eventually to Florida. But what I found to be very fascinating was the what seemed to be inappropriate relations he had with his mother.
Really.
And yeah, I mean, it's not out of the scope of reality of seeing children at older ages
Hmm.
sleeping in bed with mom,
Yeah.
but till you're what, 14 years old, that's
Now
kind of,
most boys are like, hell no.
yeah. But I think it kind of looked like the same background for Norman Bates from Psycho,
Yes.
where he was very close with his mother and in fact kept her
Right.
dead body up in the attic, and he
Right.
took on the persona when she died
Which was
of the
which was
mother.
based on Ed Gein, which is that
Yes,
same thing, that mom thing, and that he was digging up
there's
all these
always something.
corpses. That's like so gross. I mean, oh,
It's always something. That you can always find that correlation with every single serial killer. And
Yeah,
I often wonder, is this outside influence?
of course it
Could
is.
be. It
That's
could
my
very well
theory.
be. Yeah,
I'm not gonna say it's the only thing, but how's this? Sometimes the outside influence can only it only has to be a whisper. When somebody
that's it.
that's it. All it has to be is a little
Yeah.
whisper, the little push, a little okay, for then it's like a catalyst
Yes.
with what comes afterwards. It hasn't, in other words, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but it could be that one little push, that one little whisper, that one little, and then it takes off from there.
But that
And
then also insinuates, and I'm also forced to believe this, that this individual had the chemical makeup for this.
oh,
And
sure.
what better situation for something demonic and human to know this
Mhm.
about you and do that? That's all they need
Sure.
to do.
All right. I mean, we
And
could go into family
oh yeah,
curses, generational curses, bloodlines, whatever. Or okay, again, genetics. A lot of people will tell you, predisposition. That doesn't mean the gene is going to get expressed. But if you are brought up in that environment, like you say, where there's alcoholism by a parent, maybe inappropriate, God knows. I mean, that's like the perfect ground to
yes.
produce a Gerard Schaefer.
Yes, it's a perfect
Okay.
storm for anything and everything like that to happen. It's been insinuated. There's nothing to confirm that this
Right.
happened, but it just seemed a little bit too weird for me. And in
And you know what's
fact,
really funny?
all
That
the
he wanted to
evidence.
become a priest. It's like,
Yes, I found that out last night. I was like, what? And the
and they
church
turned him
actually
away.
they turned them away. They were like, oh hell no, nah. We got
No, no,
enough
no, no.
Christians right now. No,
Yeah, we need priests, but not this bad. No.
no, 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 no. And
Yeah,
I'm glad they turned them down because
sure.
could you imagine? Oh
And
my
what's really funny
goodness.
was when you look at him, especially when he was young, he had that very clean cut all American look.
Yeah.
It's like, how everybody always thinks that these type of guys are like real grungy looking. No, if you saw him, and then they say
He
that
was
that's how
smiling
he
in his
beguiled
mugshot.
he beguiled all these women. Um,
Whores.
Basically because of his appearance, because he looked so wholesome.
He considered them whores. If they
Yeah,
were
but to
hitchhiking,
them, they were like, "Oh, he's such just a nice looking guy." Oh, of course, definitely. I trust him to go and hitch a ride with him, of course,
well,
because
he
of
was a
course that
cop.
was another thing. That well, yeah. Besides being a cop, in 1970s, also that was when hitchhiking was like, hey, it's like you look back and it's like, are they crazy? But back then it was the norm,
I wouldn't even
to
hitchhike now. And I
of
can
course,
defend myself, but
of course, yeah. It's like so many things can go wrong.
yeah,
Believe me. Again,
definitely.
Rich, it has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you, and I will be sending you that, and hopefully you will come back and we'll talk some more.
Definitely. Definitely. I loved being on your show.
It has been absolutely wonderful. Take care and good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye. Wow, this is such a great show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, as I did. Let me tell you, I love speaking to Rich, of course, like all my guests, because he's he's been around the block a few times, not once, not twice, but a few times. Okay, and what he's describing is on the money, on the money. Okay, because see, besides doing the paranormal investigation, he's done the dark side of paranormal investigations. All right. And I've talked about this before for some people that get glamorized into what paranormal research is. There's a dark side to it. And you never know when you're going to step right into it. You might be thinking this is just a general run of the mill dead person, clumping up and down the stairs, and then come to find out. And you know what? It wouldn't be the first time also that um, some people just, when you talk to them, they uh, they lie. They lie about what's really going on in their house. They're saying, this is this and this is that, and then when you get there, you find out, and what? And then, you know, if you have a team there, like I said, hopefully whoever's the team leader knows enough to say, no, 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 we've got to back out of this, you know, or we got to reconnoiter, or this is not what we thought. And like I said, there's no shame in retreat in situations like this, because in some cases, either for the safety of your team members, okay, and or just so that you will not make it worse if something like that's going on, because he was absolutely right. There's paranormal groups, not that they're bad groups, but if they really don't know, if they're out of their depth in something like this, they could make it worse. One of them could get an attack, or they could just make it worse, period, for the people that are there. And sometimes, how can I say this? Sometimes you have to back out in a way not to alarm the homeowners if and this is a big if they're not aware that something like this is going on. They might just think it's a regular, yeah, something's haunting, to tell them, no, you know what, something's here, but it's just not a regular ghost. There's something much worse going on. So sometimes you just can't blurt that out either. Sometimes people, other times they kind of know. They might have not said anything because they were afraid that they were going to have the group say, no, we can't go out there. But still, you got to feel your way out of it. But again, what he pointed out, he was absolutely true. There is, believe me, there is no upside to taking credit for knowing how to handle a situation like that type of investigation. There isn't. There isn't. People might want to say, yeah, because they're thinking, and I guarantee you, it's not like what you see in the shows. It's not. It's not, especially if you don't know what you're doing or you think you know, but then you find out when you're in the middle of it. Oh, I thought I knew what I was doing, but it turns out I didn't. All right, then that person's problems becomes your problem. All right, that's what I'm saying. A lot of times, like, he's absolutely right. Those people that want to say they're demonologists or they're knowledgeable in that field, and believe me, they don't realize that basically they might let themselves in for something that they're not prepared for. All right, and then it's apart from what that case is. It's you and your family or where you live or whatever. So again, guys, I hope you liked the show. I thought it was super interesting, and I'm hoping he's going to come back and we can talk some more, because absolutely, he's got plenty to talk about. I've got plenty to talk about with him. So until next time, remember, I think you are all wonderful, and thank you for spending this time with me. Till next time.